Scott. I'm from the Libertarian Institute and I host the Scott Horton Show, for those of you who don't know. Is this thing going? Okay. I wrote a couple of books, which I will have for sale at the back of the room after the speech. So don't forget, this one's on the Middle East. This one is on Eastern Europe. Enough already and provoked there. I will not be reading out of them for you tonight. I promise. The topic of my speech is support for Israel is against America's national interests. And, you know, I'm trying to dumb it down a little bit. I'm not trying to say that everyone should become a libertarian and agree with me about every single thing, and including every last one of my opinions about Israel. How about just, can we agree that the United States government support for Israel is against the national interests of America, the country? Reasonable enough, I think. Obviously, there's the current massive, horrible war going on in Iran. But let me just go back a minute. I think most people know the broad strokes of this. I just want to kind of try to fill you in. And I'll try to do the fast version, although every time I say that, it's the kiss of death, of course. But most people already know this stuff. So let me just remind you what you already know. In the Ike Eisenhower years, the CIA helped to overthrow a guy that they had actually helped to put in power in the first place, a guy named Mohammad Mossadegh, the prime minister of Iran, to reinstall the Shah Reza Pahlavi, the son of the previous dictator who had been there, you know, in power for a while. They reinstalled him. They supported him in was essentially a right-wing dictatorship for 26 years. And for various reasons, including his vast purchases of American weapons in the 1970s, he was overthrown in a popular revolution in 1978, 1979. Now, the thing about that is, and I remember wondering about this when I was a kid, and you guys probably all know the story, especially you older folk remember this, that the Ayatollah Khomeini was in Paris, France, in exile at the time of the revolution. And I remember being a kid and thinking, well, why did they send him back to Iran then? The French are our friends, right? And the answer is, of course, because Jimmy Carter told them to. The United States government, on the advice of the CIA and the State Department, said, the Ayatollah Khomeini, we know him. He's an old friend of ours. He was part of a group of fundamentalist Shiite clerics who helped agitate against Mossadegh in the coup of 53. So we can work with him. And they even compared him, William Sullivan from the State Department compared the Ayatollah Khomeini to Mahatma Gandhi. So now, first of all, there's the whole like nonviolent civil disobedience kind of aspect, which did not really fit with the Ayatollah Khomeini's way, as you might already apprehend here. But then the second thing is, wait, what was Gandhi famous for again? Oh, he was the guy that kicked the British Empire off of the subcontinent, right? Okay, anyway. So they said, this guy's like Gandhi. We can deal with him. It would be great. And in fact, it's your fault that in your popular memory, you remember it wrong. That the hostage crisis happened simultaneous with the revolution, but that's not true. In fact, the United States government supported the new Ayatollah revolutionary regime all through the year 1979 until November. The coup was over, the revolution was over in February. And all through that year, the Jimmy Carter government was passing intel to the Iranians, warning them of potential threats of invasion from the Soviet Union, which they acknowledged were lies, but still they were passing on those threats. And then also they were warning them about the potential of an attack from the new dictator of Iraq, who had taken power in a bloody coup d'etat, Saddam Hussein, also in 1979. So it wasn't until November when David Rockefeller, the chairman of the Chase Manhattan Bank, convinced Jimmy Carter to let the Shah into the United States for cancer treatment, which the Iranians took as a symbol or a signal that America is going to nurse the Shah back to health and try to reinstall him in power. And that was what led to the riots and the seizure of the hostages. I'm not justifying it. I'm just explaining to you that it's not true that the Ayatollahs being in power is exactly equal to American flags burning and chants of death to America and all this anti-American sentiment. In fact, America had supported that revolution And then their stupid policies blew up in their face. And by the way, they knew one of the reasons that they sacrificed the Shah in the first place was they knew that he was dying of cancer. And that was a secret, but they knew it. But then they should have known that it was way too late to save his life, and bring him into the United States was going to be nothing but trouble and for nothing. But it was essentially a personal favor on the part of Rockefeller and on the part of Carter to Rockefeller to bring him into the country that led to that crisis. Now, then that led Jimmy Carter to order Operation Eagle Claw to go to try to rescue the hostages. But that was a complete catastrophe. Helicopter crashed into a plane. I believe 8 people were killed, and the whole thing was a bust, and they had to retreat. So Carter was humiliated. So in his State of the Union speech in 1980, he announced the new Carter Doctrine, which said the Persian Gulf is an American lake, and any attempt by any power, read the USSR, to invade Iran and try to dominate the Persian Gulf would be treated as an attack on the United States itself. So even though this is a regime that we now hate, we're giving them a war guarantee like they're a NATO ally if the Soviets invade, essentially. And then as part of that Carter Doctrine, they built up bases all throughout the Arabian Peninsula. And in September of that year, Jimmy Carter gave the green light to Saddam Hussein, who a year before he was warning Iran that Saddam Hussein might invade. Now he's telling Saddam, yeah, invade. So now picture your great, very detailed map of the Middle East I know you have in your head here. And remember now, or ask, and I'll answer, why is it that Saddam Hussein might be so worried about the Iranian Revolution? Well, Baghdad sits more or less in the middle of Iraq, and it was ruled by this secular Sunni minority dictatorship, the Ba'athist Party, which is basically a fascist type party or socialistic type party. But it was a minority rule dictatorship, 20% Sunni Arabs ruling over 60% Shiite Arabs in all the land from Baghdad to Iran and down to Kuwait. And then in the north are the Kurds, and they're Sunnis, but they're not Arabs, they're Kurds. And so there's a separation there, and they were allied with the Shiites. So Saddam Hussein looked at the Iranian Revolution, and he immediately saw a real threat. The Iraqi Shiites could choose their religious sect over their national and ethnic sect as Iraqis and Arabs, and import the Iranian Revolution into Iraq and overthrow him. So his solution to that was to conscript them all and to send them to war against Iran instead. And when he did that, it was shown that he had real reason to fear, because there were some Iraqi Shiite leaders who went to Iran and took Iran's side in the Iran-Iraq war, namely the Supreme Council for Islamic Revolution in Iraq, and their Badr Brigade went and joined, or really was formed by the Iranians out of Iraqi traitors, essentially, who had chosen Iran's side in the war. So then America backed Saddam Hussein all through the Ronald Reagan years as well, until 1988 in the Iran-Iraq war. Now, you might remember, though, what about Iran-Contra when Ronald Reagan was selling missiles to Iran too, Scott? Well, in fact, they had a deal with the Israelis. You keep backing Iran, and we'll keep backing Iraq, and we'll get as many of them killed as possible. When one side starts getting ahead, if Iran starts pulling ahead, we'll increase weapons to Iraq. And if Iraq starts pulling ahead, we'll authorize the Israelis to increase weapons to Iran to keep the war going and make it worse. And in fact, when Ronald Reagan did switch sides during the Iran-Contra scandal and sold missiles to the Ayatollah, how did he do it? Through the Israelis. They were the cutout who provided the missiles. You give them your missiles and I'll give you more. And that was how they did that. So, which goes to show the very crucial point that Israel did not break with Iran after the Iranian Revolution. Despite all the hype that you hear about radical Islamist fundamentalism, they didn't really have a problem with that. Israel didn't break with the Iranian regime until 1993. I'll get back to that in a second. But so the Iran-Iraq war led directly to Iraq War I, because what happened was Saddam Hussein was broke from the war, and he had borrowed billions of dollars from the Kuwaitis, the Saudis, and UAE in order to pay for the war, in essence, to protect them as well. And then he was flat broke. He couldn't pay back his war debts. Oil was trading then, you guys are going to be mad at me for even saying this, at $12 a barrel. And so he couldn't rebuild his country, and he couldn't pay back his loans. And the Kuwaitis were really being intransigent about it. Now, you could say this was deliberate, but I really don't believe it was. I believe it's just a matter of the empire being too big and having too many departments. But in effect, they lured Saddam Hussein into invading because CENTCOM and CIA were telling the Kuwaitis to be intransigent and stick it to Saddam. While the State Department was telling Saddam Hussein, you don't have to take that guff from them. If I were you, I'd break their legs. And then the Defense Department under Dick Cheney and Paul Wolfowitz was saying, no, wait, don't. But it was too late. And so Saddam invaded Kuwait. And then the American government was actually going to let him get away with it until 3 days later, Margaret Thatcher, the Prime Minister of Britain, came to town and she ridiculed President Bush. She said, don't you go wobbly on me now, Bush. In other words, ridiculing his manhood. And in fact, her staff told the papers that she went there to give Bush a backbone transplant. And it was after that that Bush said, oh, yeah, well, this will not stand. And that was when they built up to do the war. And then for the next 6 months, they refused to negotiate, even though Saddam Hussein did not want war with his paymasters, the United States of America. He tried and tried and tried to negotiate, and they refused to negotiate because once they decided they were having a war, they saw the opportunity to expand the footprint of American military power in the Middle East. And so what everyone supposedly still to this day regards as this great successful Desert Storm, Iraq War I, kicked off in January 1991. And we've been bombing Iraq for 36 years ever since. And part of that was because after the end of the war, George Bush Sr. encouraged the Shiite majority of Iraq to rise up and overthrow Saddam Hussein. He said it over Voice of America radio, and the Air Force dropped leaflets over Iraqi army divisions telling them rise up and overthrow Saddam. Now's your chance. And they tried. But then the Bush administration changed their mind. And they let Saddam Hussein keep his tanks and his attack helicopters and crush the Shiite uprising. Why? Well, remember now, or if you're younger and don't know, listen up. The Bush Senior administration was really Ronald Reagan's third term. These were all the same guys. He had been the vice president, and everyone in his government other than Dick Cheney had been a member of the Reagan administration. Cheney had been in the Congress then. But Colin Powell and James Baker and the rest of those guys were all Reagan's guys. So they said, oh no, look at what we're doing. We just spent a decade supporting Saddam Hussein's war to contain the Iranian Revolution. Now we're the ones importing it. And you had the Iraqis who had chosen Iran's side in the Iran-Iraq war. They were coming across the border to lead the takeover in Baghdad. So that was why they changed their mind and let Saddam crush them. But then that became the big fake moral reason why America had to stay in Saudi Arabia, was to protect those Shiites and the Kurds in the north as well. And that was when they launched the no-fly zones. And this meant that, oh, sorry about all our promises to the king of Saudi Arabia and the rest, that we will pull our bases out of there and leave as soon as the war is over. Now we have to stay. Now, when Bill Clinton came into power, and forgive me, I don't mean to sound like I'm saying something good about the man. I'm just saying this happens to be part of the history. He had intended originally to normalize relations with Iraq and Iran to focus on domestic politics. But what happened was he stupidly blabbed that instead of keeping those cards close to his chest. So the Kuwaitis, and this wasn't the Israelis that did this, it was the Kuwaitis, spun up what almost everyone in this room probably still believes to this day was real, or you've never heard it contradicted, the completely fake, alleged assassination attempt against George Bush Sr. by Saddam Hussein with a truck bomb in Kuwait in 1993. Never happened. Total hoax. Debunked by the Boston Globe and by Seymour Hersh in the New Yorker magazine. It was just a whiskey smuggling ring. And the Kuwaitis embellished it into a plot against Bush in order to sabotage Bill Clinton's stated intention to normalize with Iraq. And at that time, the Clinton government was under severe pressure. He had just come into power. He just finished murdering the Branch Davidians a few days previously. He was under this enormous pressure from the Israelis. I just like to throw that in. He was under enormous pressure from the Israelis to adopt what they called their dual containment policy. And that said, America just beat up on Iraq so badly in Iraq War I that they're not powerful enough to balance against Iran anymore. So now America has to stay in Saudi to balance against them both. And Bill Clinton was resisting this until the alleged fake assassination attempt against Bush, at which point he gave in to the Israelis and adopted this policy, announced by Martin Indyk, an Israeli agent at the Washington Institute for Near East Policy, a literal, not just figurative, but literal spinoff of the American Israel Public Affairs Committee. And it was this policy of keeping American bases in Saudi Arabia in order to bomb and blockade Iraq through the 1990s at Israel's behest, which was the single most important factor in turning America, Britain, and Saudi Arabia's pet terrorists, the Mujahideen from Afghanistan, another invention of Jimmy Carter and his guys from the late 1970s and early 80s, to turn against the United States. And so even though Bill Clinton kept backing al-Qaeda in Bosnia, Kosovo, and Chechnya throughout the 1990s, they were attacking us here. And in fact, even after September 11th, there are 2 or 3 quotes from Bill Clinton and other Democrats saying that they were sort of mystified. Oh, how come these Muslims are so mad at us? Don't they know that we helped them in Afghanistan and Bosnia and Kosovo and Chechnya? But they hadn't bought their loyalty at all because they were still committing the massive affront of leaving American foreign combat forces on the holy Arabian Peninsula. I mean, I'm a Texan and I can tell you how badly we'd buck if there were foreign occupation forces in San Antonio, how badly we'd fight for the Alamo. Well, just imagine if Jesus had been born at the Alamo. How much more so the very same dang thing there, right? Mecca and Medina is the birthplace of Muhammad and the birthplace of the religion of Islam. And so 2 of the 3 most important holy sites are in Saudi Arabia. And so this was a huge motivating factor in turning al-Qaeda against the United States. In fact, al-Qaeda's first attack in the United States, or really proto-al-Qaeda, it was Egyptian Islamic Jihad, which ended up merging with other groups into form al-Qaeda later in the decade. But sort of proto-al-Qaeda, their first attack in America in 1990 was the assassination of the radical right-wing rabbi Kahane, the founder of the Koch party. He had been banned in Israel by the Supreme Court because he was a, quote, fascist. His party was banned from participation in Israeli politics. But his goal, his stated purpose of his movement was to kill and or expel all Arabs from all of historic Palestine, take all of the West Bank and the Gaza Strip, which ain't so extreme. That's like center-left politics in Israel now. But that was his politics then. And that was the first guy that they did. And it was the same group that then blew up the World Trade Center in 1993 when Bill Clinton had only been in office for a month and a week. And they almost succeeded in toppling one building over into the other, which could have killed 50,000 people or close, in the late afternoon on a Friday. But then what happened was the ATF raided the Branch Davidians church on Sunday morning, 2 days later, and everybody forgot about what had happened in New York. It was only 6 dead, and it was a bunch of Arabs with names that are hard to memorize and things. And so all attention was diverted from that. But anyway, they continued to attack. They hit our guys at a hotel in Yemen in 92. That was before 93, but yeah. American forces training the National Guard in Saudi Arabia in 95. And there was also a busted plot in 95 in the Philippines. This is where the primary World Trade Center bomber Ramzi Youssef or his buddies were caught in the Philippines. And they had on their laptop a plan to kill Bill Clinton, to kill Pope John Paul II, to time bomb 12 planes over the Pacific, and then another plot to hijack 10 planes and crash them into landmarks on America's coast. The same plot that ended up becoming the 9/11 planes operation. That was in 95. And in 96, the Khobar Towers attack, which Bill Clinton and the Saudis blamed on Iran, and what they called Iranian-backed Saudi Hezbollah, which is a figment of their imagination, or barely more than that, and certainly had nothing to do with it. It was bin Laden. And this is so crucial because who'd they kill? They killed 19 American airmen whose job it was to bomb and blockade Iraq. And so that entire political message that there are these radical right-wing Salafi Wahhabi terrorists, Ronald Reagan's guys, are now turning on us because of our presence in Saudi Arabia, that narrative was crushed by Iran. Did it from across the Gulf for no reason at all. Okay. And then that was that. Then they bombed the Africa embassies in 98 and the USS Cole in 2000. And really, there's a very perverse effect of the Africa embassy bombings because it became cliche inside the Pentagon and the Joint Staff. They would say repeatedly, this was heard over and over. It became kind of a repeated phrase. Terrorism is a small price to pay for being a superpower. Because what are they going to do? Set off a truck bomb overseas and kill mostly Africans and some embassy officials or something? But meanwhile, we get to rule the whole world. So what's the big deal? That was the way that they looked at it. And really failed to protect the American people because of that attitude in large measure. And then they did September 11th. And I know that so many people are 9/11 truthers, and that's the popular theory that Israeli spies put bombs in all three towers and all that. But that isn't what it was. It was that Israel motivated that attack. And they did that by, one, their policy of insisting America continue to occupy Saudi Arabia, but also, of course, their direct support for Israel and their violence in the Middle East, which brings us to the Qana massacre of 1996, when Shimon Peres launched Operation Grapes of Wrath in 1996, and I think late spring of 96. Mohammed Atta, who became the lead September 11th hijacker, signed his last will and testament, which was like his figurative joining the army, dedicating himself to the fight against the United States. And then he went off and joined Al-Qaeda and ended up leading the cell of guys that brought down the towers. And so here you have an Egyptian engineering student studying in Hamburg, Germany, goes and volunteers for a Saudi sheikh to take revenge against Americans for what Israel's doing in Lebanon. Got that? So that's why they told your mama that they hate us for your freedom. They hate us because of our goodness. So what are we going to do except defend ourselves in a situation like this? That was why they lied. And get this, guys, I didn't know this until just the other day. You're all very familiar, I'm sure, with the New York Times story. It's got the date September 12th, but it was actually written, the night of September 11th, 2001. And it's about Benjamin Netanyahu's reaction to the attack on New York and Washington. And the reporter asks Netanyahu, what does this mean for America's relationship with Israel? And he says, it's very good. Oh, I mean, you know what I mean? Not it's very good, but it's, it'll be good for getting the American people to understand that y'all's enemies are the same as ours and this kind of thing. Well, here's what I just found out the other day. The reporter who wrote that story published a memoir. And this is on the Twitter feed of John Schwartz, no T in Schwartz and no H in John. And if you look at his Twitter feed, you'll see that there's more to that story and more to that quote. And Benjamin Netanyahu, the night of September 11th, mused to the New York Times reporter and said, I wonder if the American people will blame us for this. And then he said, no, I'm sure they'll see that we just have common enemies in these radical Islamists. And see, he wasn't talking about whether you would figure out that Mossad spies put bombs in Building 7. He was talking about the fact that he knew good and well that Israel's violence motivated terrorism against American civilians. And he was hoping that we wouldn't put that together. And after bringing it up as a hypothetical, he decided, nah, they probably won't figure that out. And here we are. Also in 1996, David Wormser, who's actually not quite a neoconservative, but he's Richard Pearl's lackey, so same difference. Wormser wrote 3 major important studies. 2 of them were really for this Israeli think tank, and then they followed up with a book. And I'm sure you've heard of them, but I'm going to explain because I like to. A Clean Break, a new strategy for securing the realm. This was written by these American neocons for Benjamin Netanyahu, then the incoming prime minister of Israel, for the first time in 1996. The companion piece is called Coping with Crumbling States, an American and Israeli balance of power strategy for the Levant. And then the monograph is called Tyranny's Ally, America's Failure to Remove Saddam Hussein. Get that? Tyranny's ally. As long as America doesn't launch a regime change war, it's our responsibility. Like it's still the Reagan years and we're directly propping this guy up. Same difference to them. That's the way they frame it. Anyway, what's the point of the clean break? The point of the clean break is we don't want to negotiate with the Palestinians. We don't want to let them have an independent state. We want to kill them and steal what they've got. But the problem with that is we have to deal with the menace of Hezbollah, the Shiite militia in southern Lebanon on our northern border. And they have this missile capability that can prevent us from having our way in Palestine. So our major strategic goal is to break the alliance of Iran, Syria, and Hezbollah in southern Lebanon. Now, absolutely idiotically, they said the way to do this is to focus on removing Saddam Hussein from power in Iraq. But Saddam Hussein was the secular Sunni roadblock on that Shiite axis, as we already described. But these idiots are brilliant geniuses, see, and they had it all gamed out. What's going to happen is once we get rid of Saddam Hussein in Iraq, yes, the Iraqi Shiite supermajority will be dominant there, but they will be dominated by our sock puppet Jordanian king. And we will install his cousin, a Hashemite king. And because the Hashemites claim to be descended from Muhammad, every Shiite has to just bow down and do whatever they say. And so they'll be under our magic spell. And at that point, the king of Jordan can make the religious authorities down in Najaf tell Hezbollah to stop being friends with Iran and start being friends with Israel instead. Okay? Now, this is completely stupid and wrong. If that was true, how come they can't just call up the king of Jordan right now and tell him to tell Hezbollah and tell the religious authorities in Najaf, and for that matter, tell the Ayatollah in Iran to knock off all his bad behavior and do like they're told? Because that's completely stupid and wrong. And in fact, David Wormser gave an interview last year where he apparently still believes this. All evidence to the contrary, in the meantime, notwithstanding, because you might remember on David Wormser's advice, Dick Cheney invaded Iraq in 2003. And what happened? Are the Jordanians dominant in Iraq and all the Iraqi Shiites are under their magic spell and do whatever they're told? No. America put Iran's best friends in power, the Supreme Council for Islamic Revolution in Iraq and their Badr Brigade. You know, the Iraqi traitors that chose Iran's side in the Iran-Iraq war, the ones who were going to take Baghdad in 91 if Bush Sr. hadn't betrayed him. They're the same ones that Bush Jr. took all the way to Baghdad in 2003. And then fought a 5-year civil war on Iran's best friend's behalf. Now, look, it's the bin Ladenites that are your enemy and my enemy, not the Shiites. But they are America's empire's regional rivals. And here America fought what in soccer they call an own goal, right? This massive victory for the other side of the ledger. America's empire in the Middle East is the Sunni kings, the Turks and the Israelis, right? But what we did was we put Baghdad on Iran's side of the ledger. So this then explains why Barack Obama backed al-Qaeda in Syria back in his term. Backed them so bad that it blew up into the Islamic State ISIS caliphate, led by this guy Baghdadi, who declared that he ruled, and did in fact rule, all of Western Syria and, Eastern Syria and Western Iraq and create the Islamic State. That was the natural result of America, Israel, Turkey, Saudi, and Qatar pouring all this money in to support the guys who had been our worst enemies in Iraq War II, al-Qaeda in Iraq. But when they're al-Qaeda in Iraq and Syria, they're our guys. We love them because that's what Israel wants. Because we just put Iran up 2 pegs in Baghdad. Now we have to take them down a peg in Damascus. But then what happened was ISIS didn't sack Damascus. They sacked Mosul. Oops. So then America had to launch Iraq War III, beginning in August 2014 and ending after about a year and a half of Trump in 2018, to destroy the caliphate that they built. And in Iraq War III, putting themselves again on the side of Iran's best friends, the Iraqi Shiites. And in fact, in the case, for one example, during the liberation of Saddam Hussein's hometown of Tikrit, you literally had not just Iranian-backed Shiite militias, but you had the Iranian Quds Force on the ground leading Iraqi Shiite militias with the United States Air Force flying overhead to drive out the Islamic State Caliphate that America had built to spite them for winning the war that we had won for them last time, and then won another war for them again. Now, again, this is all because of Israel's interests. This is all because the neoconservatives care about the world from the Likud party's point of view. They don't care about bin Ladenites blowing up American civilians and American military men. They care about Hezbollah, and al-Qaeda kills Hezbollah. So al-Qaeda is A-okay with them, and therefore the U.S. government. And that's why Joe Biden celebrated, just as I'm sure you all saw, Netanyahu went to the border and took credit when what was left of al-Qaeda in Syria broke out of their pen in the Idlib province and sacked Damascus and took over Damascus in the late part of November and early December 2024. Joe Biden celebrated it. And then what happened when Donald Trump came in? He invited Abu Muhammad al-Jawlani, the leader of al-Qaeda in Iraq and Syria, the new presidente of Syria, to the Oval Office and flirted with him and sprayed perfume on him and told him what a strong and handsome man he is. Why? Why would the president of the United States have a leader of al-Qaeda in the Oval Office? After, right, not in the 1980s, after September 11th, after Iraq War II, after the Caliphate, because Israel hates Hezbollah. And so America is in service to them. That's it. And this is on the most basic level. One, driving anti-American terrorism against us, no matter, just like in the 1990s, Bill Clinton took al-Qaeda's side. That didn't buy their loyalty whatsoever. They're still perfectly happy to kill Americans, no matter what America, the government does for them in Syria or anywhere else, or in Yemen. They're still perfectly happy to kill us. But the American people's interests clearly are in the Middle East. One thing, keeping bin Ladenites down. That's it. Keeping them away from us and doing everything we can to not create new, wide and wild open battle spaces for them to fight and grow and thrive in. But Israel's interest is in limiting Iran's ability to support Hezbollah. And so our government will commit high treason on behalf of anti-American terrorists on behalf of Israel. Really sucks. And in fact, as soon as this current war in Iran started, the first thing that happened, they bombed that school that morning, on Saturday morning. And that night, an American immigrant Muslim from Senegal, I didn't even know they had Shiites in Senegal. I don't even know if the guy was a Shiite, really. But he took an AR-15. He went down to 6th Street in Austin, Texas, my hometown. He killed 3 innocent people and wounded 15 more. And the only reason that those numbers are not way higher is because he went to a massive tourist attraction, 6th Street, which is, our Bourbon Street, basically, covered in cops. And so they were able to close on him and destroy him almost immediately. But that was all it took, was just one kook. If he had had one friend with him to hold the cops at bay while he went into the bar, we'd be talking about an absolutely much worse massacre, maybe hundreds of percents worse. And here's the thing about this, and there's some women here, but mostly guys. Each and every one of you, I don't know about you women, maybe you guys are sickos too, but each and every man in this room can think of ways to inflict severe damage onto soft targets. Just a handgun, just a rifle, never mind a truck full of gasoline or some homemade explosives, or a team of men who've practiced and decided what they're going to do. The kind of damage that can be inflicted by 1 to 3 to 5 people trying hard, especially if they're willing to die trying, first of all, at scale, it's not the kind of thing that can bring down our country, but it's the kind of thing that can cause massive damage in our towns. In any one terrorist attack can cause massive damage. And there's only one way to prevent it. And it's not to create a totalitarian police state and let Palantir put a camera in our car and follow every one of us around everywhere we go. We have to stop motivating anti-American terrorism. That's what it is. We have to get our bases off of holy soil. We have to stop paying the Israelis to kill Palestinians, Lebanese, Iranians, Syrians, and whoever else with our F-16s, F-15s, and M-16s. And because you just can't kill your way out of that problem. I mean, the chances that that guy from Senegal was sent here by anyone else to be a sleeper cell and to one day do something like this are less than 1, probably less than 0, right? He's just an asshole. He just decided this is his walk-on part in the war and he's going to do it. It didn't take anyone to tell him to do it. So, but it's the circumstances that the American government created in which he did that. The same thing you may have seen a Muslim postal carrier shoved brutally, like as hard as he could, a 4-year-old Jewish boy, I believe in New York State the other day, and it's on video. This is blowback terrorism. And I know people get all emotional, like somehow that's a justification. Guys, Terrorism, by definition, means that the targets are innocent civilians. That's what it means. How can that be a justification? But it is the fact that it is a absolutely predictable reaction when our government does these things. It's an asymmetric war. That's how the weak fight. And that poor child was caught up as collateral damage, as a victim. It's like the people on September 11th, as a victim in somebody else's fight. Of course, that's in no way a rationalization. They can get the rope for the guy. I mean, he's a government employee anyway. He doesn't get a fair trial. I don't care what happens to him. I'm not saying that. I'm not rationalizing what he's done. I'm not saying it's an excuse. I'm saying it's the reason. Just like America supporting Shimon Peres killing kids. And in fact, by the way, I mentioned Mohammed Atta. It was Naftali Bennett, the once and future prime minister of Israel, was literally actually the man who called in an artillery strike that killed 106 women and children in Qana, Lebanon in 96, that Osama bin Laden mentioned in his first declaration of war against the United States. That was what convinced Mohammed Atta to join Al-Qaeda, was his reaction to bin Laden's reaction to that atrocity. Certainly not a justification for crashing a 757 into an office tower full of civilians, but it's why that happened. And now, let me just talk about the war real quick, and I'll try to wrap up, take some questions if y'all want or whatever. But I'm sorry, how am I on time? Am I over already? Okay. So the war itself, the excuses for the war, of course, are completely preposterous. They're just lying to you. And I take that personally. I don't know about you guys, but to me, the implied first part of a lie is, hey, stupid, I bet you're dumb enough to believe this. And I'm just smart enough to be insecure enough where, like, that really hurts my feelings. I really don't like it when people lie to me and call me stupid like that. They go, oh, Iran was 2 weeks away from a nuclear bomb. Yeah, well, that's not true. In fact, they weren't making a nuclear bomb at all. In fact, they never were. In fact, even when you hear the CIA say that they stopped even looking into making a nuclear bomb in 2003, even that's not true. Even that was based on two things. One, well-intentioned but mistaken interpretations of some DIA intercepts that turned out to be about dual-use materials that were being put to their civilian uses, as later proved by the IAEA. Ooh, very suspicious magnets here. Oh, there's the magnet right there at the university, right where they said it was. Okay, fine. And then the other half of it was the Israeli-forged smoking laptop of 2004 that they claimed was smuggled out of an Iranian scientist's laptop that was smuggled out of the country, which is completely fake. The CIA admitted they're the ones who provided the laptop, and the IAEA admitted that they originally got the information handed to them by the Mujahideen-e-Khalq acting on behalf, that's an Iranian dissident terrorist group of communist Mujahideen type guys, and that it came from the Israelis. And then you can tell from all the accusations in it that it's all forged best guesses. None of it was right. So that was the information when the CIA said, well, they were looking at it up until 2003 and then they quit. So they weren't even doing that. The Ayatollah, the mean old Ayatollah, Khomeini, and then his successor, Khamenei, had both issued fatwas. And no, it doesn't have to be in writing. I saw Hawks this week saying, oh, yeah, show it to me in writing. It doesn't have to be in writing. The fact is, and by the way, you don't have to put stock in a word that any politician says, much less a theocrat from some other religion in some other country. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying the evidence shows that his word was the law. He said weapons of mass destruction are haram and that his regime was forbidden from making chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons. And then they did not make chemical, biological, or nuclear weapons ever since then. So those edicts of what the Ayatollah said was God's opinion about weapons of mass destruction did hold. And they have never attempted to make nuclear weapons. Guys, a uranium gun-type nuke, even a plutonium implosion bomb, it's 1940s technology. If Iran had been making nuclear bombs for the last 25 years, like you've been told, don't you think they'd have at least one by now? Right. They weren't making them. It's not like they had tried and failed. They had not made the decision, as Tulsi Gabbard confirmed before the attack last June, the director of national intelligence, they had not made the political decision to begin to try to make a nuke. Okay. So the whole thing was a red herring. Nothing different than Saddam Hussein's weapons of mass destruction. It's a pretext for war. And then now here's what happened last June with the nuclear program, okay? And the DIA was mistaken about this too. Trump did obliterate their program. You might remember the DIA said, well, maybe not so much. Yeah, he did too. He bombed the crap out of it. He took the entire Natanz and Fordo enrichment facilities offline, and also, crucially, the conversion facility at Isfahan. Now, uranium comes in a metal. Remember the yellow cake? Don't drop that shit. That yellow cake uranium, you have to convert that to uranium hexafluoride gas. That's what you spin in your centrifuges to enrich it to a higher purity uranium-235. Then you got to convert it back into metal again to make fuel rods or a warhead out of it. Well, they completely decimated the conversion facility. Iran has no ability whatsoever to take uranium metal and turn it into a gas, or uranium hexafluoride gas and turn it back into metal. So they're just completely stalled out. They can have, you know, whatever, even if they had taken their entire store of partially enriched uranium and kept it safe somewhere, it's still absolutely useless to them. They can't do a thing with it. Okay. And this is why, according to credible reports, including from the Omanis, but Americans backing it up off the record as well, the Ayatollah, before the war started 3 weeks ago, was willing to climb virtually all the way down the ladder on negotiation. Trump had in hand a deal way better than Obama's JCPOA of 2015, which Donald Trump tore up in 2018 because it was helping prevent war. And they need pretext for war. And the expanded inspections regime and restricted nuclear program of the JCPOA thwarted the narrative that something had to be done here. So that was why they got rid of that. But just a few weeks ago, Trump's guys had in hand a deal way better than the JCPOA. It had a full moratorium on all enrichment for 5 years. Then it said they will only enrich to 1.5% uranium-235, which I didn't even know you could run your electricity reactor off of that, but I guess so, at less efficiency. But that's even, below half of the 3.6 that they were at before for their electricity program, and that they would ship all of their uranium stockpile out of the country, and not just to Russia to turn into fuel rods, but to the United States, which of course they can't trust anyway, but that we could turn into fuel rods and ship back to them to use in their reactors. And then they launched the war. And I think it's pretty clear that they launched the war. And in fact, I interviewed Joe Ken. I had the second interview of Joe Ken after he resigned, and he told me that he thought so too. They launched the war because negotiations were too fruitful. The pretext for war was being undermined, so they had to hurry up and go. Now, and when it comes to the missiles and all of that, well, they're no threat to the United States of America. People are freaking out today because they launched supposedly 2 missiles at Diego Garcia, neither of which reached Diego Garcia. And then they go, oh, they were lying all along about the range of their missiles. But that's not true either. Last October, as a result of the war of last June, the Ayatollah publicly announced that he was lifting his political restriction of 2,000 miles on their missiles and saying that his men could now attempt to achieve longer ranges. That had always been a political limitation in the first place. And then they changed their mind. Pardon me. And the missiles were never a threat to the United States of America, but they should have been a big deterrent to the United States of America. And I'm not really trying to pat myself on the back too much, but like, I'm sorry, I did told you so, like maybe more than anyone ever, because when I first started doing my, when I first started doing my show full time on a daily basis in January of 2007, this was right when they were launching the surge in Iraq. And it was reported by Joe Klein in Newsweek, and then it was verified a couple other places. But what had happened was the Joint Chiefs of Staff took W. Bush to the Pentagon, and they took him down to the tank in the basement there in this skiff, and they gave him a nice lecture. And they said, listen, Bush, we'll escalate the Iraq war. We'll do the surge, but we don't want to go to war with Iran. Please don't make us do war with Iran. And then they explained to him why. They said, look, America is number one. We're the superpower. Yes, we have stealth. Yes, we have H-bombs. Yes, comes down to it. America can defeat Persia, okay? But at what cost? Because the military doesn't want to fight anyone where they won't have what they call escalation dominance. And escalation dominance means they will control every aspect of the war, every stage of the war. And when the war moves from one stage to another stage, it's because the Pentagon has decided it's time to change stages in the war. They don't want to get in a fight fair enough where the other side is going to have a say in it at all. They want to, the Mike Tyson rule that your plan changes as soon as you get punched in the mouth. Well, their idea is if you're Mike Tyson, you beat up people so weak that no, you just punch them in the mouth once and the fight's over, and then you don't have to adjust your plan. And they told Bush, don't make us fight Iran because they can fight back. And Bush said, okay. Now look, at that time, America had 150,000 guys in Iraq and 50 in Afghanistan. And in Iraq, they were embedded with Iraqi Shiite militias who were perfectly willing to order 66 and shoot them right in the back. And so W. Bush was really in a bind that he had put himself in at that time. But still, and as we talked about from January 07, I don't know when it's the first time I said this, but it must have been in 07 or 08, at least at the latest, that just look at the map. It's just like you guys have seen the funny meme. Obviously, Iran means us harm, or else why they put their country so close to all our military bases. Well, the thing is about those military bases, they're very close to Iran. This is America's dominance in the Gulf as we have this massive presence there. Army and Air Force in Kuwait, Air Force in Qatar, which that was the headquarters of Central Command, the Al Udeid Air Base. That's the Brits Air Base in the region as well. The 5th Fleet headquarters at Bahrain. Air Force bases at Prince Sultan and other places in Saudi Arabia, Dhahran in Saudi Arabia, and then as well as UAE and even Oman, which I think I probably always left Oman off the list because I didn't really know about our bases there, though I guess I could have guessed. But I must have said 100 times, I swear to God, 1,000 times over these years, over and over again to deaf ears, that yes, we have great interceptor missiles that can shoot down a lot of incoming fire. But Iran's entire military force is basically structured around their missile force. They have like a showpiece navy that's not really good for anything. They got speedboats, which, are potentially lethal because of their size and agility. As far as any battleships or anything like that, no one thinks that they can tangle with the U.S. Navy. Their Air Force is made of F-4s and F-14s that Richard Nixon and Jerry Ford sold them in the 1970s that are worthless without the spare parts, right? If they can, field a fighter to dogfight with any of ours, would be a surprise. So what do they got? They got missiles, and they got a lot of them, and it's just a matter of rain. You can't intercept them all. It's just a matter of volume. And so as I've warned for literally decades here, we have bases in Kuwait, Saudi, Qatar, Bahrain, and there are $1 trillion, or sometimes I would say $1 gazillion worth of economic targets all up and down the other side of the Persian Gulf, the southwestern side of the Persian Gulf. And all of this is at risk. Now, can America eventually carpet bomb Iran off the face of the earth, even without nuclear weapons? Yes. Can we eventually, find and fix and destroy enough of their military power that we can call it some kind of victory? Presumably. Then again, the country's the size of 2.5 Texases is with 2 mountain ranges. And again, their entire speciality is launching missiles out of the backs of trucks. I mean, this is the kind of thing that missiles, the kind of weapons that can be hidden anywhere. Point is, Donald Trump, on Israeli advice, believed that this would be easy. He was told all you got to do is hit them and they'll fall right over. Every last Iranian is just chomping at the bit to overthrow his government for Israel. All you got to do is hit them. And of course, he was drunk on the ease of the Delta Force mission in Venezuela, where they went in there and they kidnapped the head of state and his wife right out of their beds like it was an Afghan night raid. No Americans killed in the thing. And so then he was just high on that he's got his special operations guys can just do anything. This is the same thinking behind W. Bush invading Iraq in 2003. Are you saying you don't believe that our big green machine can do anything? You don't believe in our army to smash what they want? But the thing is, they can't build in the place of whatever they smash. They have tactics and operational art, but there's no strategy behind it to implement that makes any sense. But Donald Trump bought this. Oh, and one more thing. You guys remember the giant propaganda campaign in January. They said the Iranian regime has killed between 30 and 50 or even 80,000 innocent protesters who had all risen up to overthrow the government there. And the thing about that is obviously the first point of it, and really the only real point of it, right, was to brainwash you, to make you so morally outraged at the illegitimacy of this regime that you would support a war. And I know you saw it on the margin. That worked. People said, America's got to go save these people. And it was great. I don't know which PR firm came up with this, but they earned their money on this one, their millions. They said, Donald Trump promised. Now he has to fulfill that promise to help the people of Iran, blah, blah. Okay. Anyway, but here's the real thing. It was like 3,000 killed, and about 1,000 of those were cops. And the other 2,000, some of them probably were protesters, but many of them were not. Many of them were armed groups of people who were attacking police stations, burning mosques, and attempting to violently overthrow the government there. What do you think Barack Obama would do if violent insurrectionists were taking over Washington, D.C., other than, well, I guess if he was trying to make Trump people look bad, you know, they might hold their fire. But little J6 reference for you there. But look at the bonus army. The bonus army wasn't threatening anything. They came unarmed and were camped across the Potomac and just said, we want our bonuses from the First World War, from the Great War, Woodrow Wilson's Great War, to try to survive the Depression. They weren't threatening anyone. And Herbert Hoover sent MacArthur and Eisenhower to remove them at bayonet point. And some of them were killed. So anyway, that's what Iran did, was the regime protected itself from an attempted violent overthrow, the exact same as any regime would do. And a total of about 3,000 people were killed, which, as far as any innocent civilians who got caught up in that, that's terrible. People got the right to protest, whatever. But here's the real thing of it, right? Is that Donald Trump is also a victim of this propaganda. And you see the implication there? If the Iranian government had to kill 50,000 innocent protesters to get the other few 100,000 of them to quit and go home, well, then I guess their regime is very brittle. And I guess maybe Benjamin Netanyahu's right that all we have to do is hit them and they'll fall over. Apparently, there is a popular consensus in the country to rise up and overthrow them. But that wasn't true at all. And when they killed the Ayatollah, you saw all the clips. Look, people are cheering in Tehran. Yeah, so if they killed Donald Trump, people would be cheering in New York City and Washington, D.C. Does anybody think that that would represent the majority opinion out in the country? No, not for a moment. So the propagandists feed all of this stuff to Donald Trump, and then he's making his decisions based not on, okay, here's the truth, but here's what we're telling him. He's basing his decisions based on what we're telling him that he believes as well. And he's really gotten us in a lot of trouble here. You've seen a couple of leaks, and he's all over the place with these Truth Social posts. Who knows? But he said a couple of times, okay, well, we've won and we're about ready to start wrapping it up now. We think we might, if we feel like it, that we'll call this a victory and come home now. And let somebody else open the Strait of Hormuz. Who cares? Not me. Hey, all right. And man, when he says stuff like that, we got to get behind him. Let him call it whatever he wants. Of course, it's the greatest victory in the history of victories. And it's gold and it's tall and it's handsome and wealthy and it's the greatest victory ever. And they stole 2020, by the way, too. And yes, and stop the war now, right? Anything like that we can, any of that sentiment, whatever it takes to get them to stop the thing. But the thing is, the Iranians might just not let him do that. You know, when he killed Soleimani, the Ayatollah fired a handful of missiles at an empty corner of an American base in Iraq. Some guys got concussions, but it was a deliberate attempt to not kill Americans. Same thing last June. Trump used B-2s to drop 14 bombs on Fordo and Natanz. The Ayatollah fired 14 missiles at our base in Qatar in response, and according to Trump, called ahead and warned, we're about to shoot 14 missiles. Shoot them down if you know what's good for you. So this was, as you can tell, this is just enough of a barely finger open hand slap to show that we're not pacifists and you can't push us around without us doing anything in response. But it was also clearly meant to leave the door open to negotiations. And Trump let him have the last word even. And that the Ayatollah was clearly not trying to declare total war against us. And he was the most conservative force in the government, probably. And I don't mean right-wing radical force. I mean conservative one. Well, they killed him. The guy that said that God said you're not allowed to make atom bombs. The guy that said, let's just fire 14 missiles and leave it at that. They killed that guy. So now they have hit every single American base in the region, 17 of them. And they've taken every single one of them offline. The naval base at Bahrain, the 5th Fleet headquarters at Bahrain is destroyed and evacuated. And we've lost 13 soldiers and airmen already killed and a couple of hundred wounded. Another F-15 was shot down over Kuwait today. It's rumored that that first one was actually a rogue Kuwaiti pilot that took Iran's side and shot the Americans down. I don't know if that's really true or not. They say the official answer is it was friendly fire from a surface-to-air missile system. But the thing is that many strategists and analysts are saying, and I'm not vouching for this personally, but it makes a lot of sense to me, that the Iranians are not going to quit now. They're going to keep the war going as long as they can to punish the West economically and politically for this, and to let us know that you better not do this to us because the cost that you pay will be too high. The conservative, the extraordinarily conservative response of the past is now canceled. And so then if we quit, they're going to keep bombing Israel, and they're going to keep bombing our assets in the Middle East. They're going to keep the Gulf closed. They're willing to take the economic pain in order to inflict it on us. And there is no good exit strategy out of here. We can do what Ron Paul says and just come home. That is no guarantee, in which we should, but that's no guarantee that the Iranians are going to quit until they're satisfied that the American side has been taught and the Israeli side have been taught this severe of a lesson. And so I saw someone on Twitter pointed out today that after America supported Saddam Hussein's invasion of Iran in 1980, the Iranians had retaken all of their territory by 1983, but they refused to negotiate until 1988. They wanted to keep fighting after they'd already won back what they'd lost for another 5 years. And they were willing to take the pain of that. And they lost something like 500,000 people in the war against Iraq, where America did support Saddam Hussein's use of chemical weapons against them, in fact. No hard feelings there, though. And so I think there's real cause to be concerned that we're in what Robert Pape calls the escalation trap. It was supposed to be easy, so it wasn't. So we bomb them harder, and then that doesn't work. So we bomb them more, and then that doesn't work. And then people start floating. Maybe we'll drop in the 82nd Airborne. Maybe we'll send in the Marines to seize Karg Island. Maybe we'll do this. Maybe we'll do that. And if you guys saw the news today or earlier today, the Iranians hit Dimona, which is where Israel's secret, illicit nuclear weapons program is based. And, with that comment by David Sachs last week about he's afraid that the Israelis could be driven to using nuclear weapons out of desperation. The term it's being bandied about as they talk about, I don't know who this Overton guy is or why it's his window, but they're making it more and more acceptable to talk about the idea that maybe it's inevitable that this is going to come down to the use of atomic bombs, which, by the way, I don't think there's any reason to believe that even if Israel nuked Tehran, that they would surrender, or if they threatened to. It's different than the Israeli style, but they kind of mirror image each other with their victimhood cult about woe is me. And Shiite Islam is based on their entire origin story is unfair persecution at the hands of their former fellow co-religionists, the Sunnis, who were very, very mean to them. And then they carry this. In our culture, we say, don't be such a martyr. It's just a cynical thing to kind of put yourself out there to be someone for something bad to happen to. We can all see you, Larry, or whatever. You know what I mean? Or if we do consider someone a martyr, it's someone who was killed who did not put themselves deliberately in the situation to be killed, but maybe they were just trying to do the right thing, or maybe they were just an innocent bystander, or it was absolutely disproportionate force that cost them their life and they become a martyr in that way. But in Iranian Shiite culture, and look, I'm not like the world's deepest anthropologist on these questions, but I think you guys probably all know this, that to deliberately get yourself killed as a martyr is the highest value of honor in their culture. I actually saw a clip recently of a little boy, 3 or 4 years old, telling the Ayatollah Khamenei, I want to be martyred. And the Ayatollah says, no, young man, first grow up and be a doctor or a scientist and live a long life till you're old like me, and then be martyred like me. Right? But, you know, and we can just recoil at that, like how horrible for this kid's parents to teach him that or whatever. Well, whatever. That's their culture. And killing not just their El Presidente, but their supreme religious leader as well is huge risk and a huge affront. And let me tell you, bin Laden didn't have a religious rank. Bin Laden had respect because he was wounded 3 times in battle and he slept on the floor of the cave with the boys and he had money. But he didn't have a religious authority at all. Much less, and you know, in Sunni Islam, you sort of pick your own minister, like in Protestant Christianity, right? But in Shiite Islam, it's really one big order of battle there. If the Ayatollah Ali al-Sistani declared a full fatwa against the United States and or, you know, the rest of the West and said that all true believers must die killing the Westerners, doing what you can against the United States of America, we'd be in for a real war. We'd be in for, and I don't know how many Shiites there are in America, and on the margin, how many of them would take those marching orders seriously, but enough to start some forest fires, enough to have some massive shooting attacks, enough that we would have really wished that we had not let Israel browbeat us into this. The American civilian population of this country, not you in particular on any given day, but American civilians are being put at risk over this, and absolutely is not worth it. So with that, I'll wrap up. Let me just say, I think it's so crucial, all the work you guys do in the Libertarian Party, most of it is unsung. You guys stop taxes from getting passed that nobody else ever even heard were on the table. You guys get gun laws repealed. You guys do, well, the work to bring the attention of the American people to the cause of peace and liberty. And it is absolutely crucial that you keep up the fight, and especially that we prioritize foreign policy and demonstrate to the people of this country, you do not have to be some patchouli stinking hippie to be against these wars. You do not have to be some pro-Hamas college kid from NYU to be against Zionism and the cruelty that they inflict on their helot captives there in Palestine. Our party is, to oversimplify, a bunch of partially educated upper middle class white guys. Well, why aren't we Republicans? Because we got principles, because we understand freedom and we understand peace, and we understand we're not willing to compromise that far with them. We have our own thing to do, and we should use this crucial tool that we have to extort Republicans whenever we can, to let them know that we don't have just the margin of error, we have the margin of victory, and we can punish them or we can let them live, but that it's up to us, even more than it's up to their Democratic opposition's voters showing up on election day. And so I urge you to use that power against the Republicans as ruthlessly as you can, because they deserve it. And then lastly, I would just say that I can't even read this handwriting anymore. I'm so old. I got to learn how to write in a bigger script. Support the Defend the Guard movement. And you know, we could have looked at Israel bombing Gaza over the last couple of years and looked at the proxy war in Ukraine and thought maybe the Defend the Guard movement is sort of obsolete. We don't have National Guard deployed in Iraq. Well, not like we used to. There actually are some. Certainly in Syria there are. We have had National Guard over there, but obviously in very small numbers in these outposts. It seems like the days of the terror wars are over. Might have seemed like that. But we got guardsmen over there right now. Air Guard and Army Guard and whoever else, I don't know all, but I know that we have guardsmen in the region in the Middle East right now. And they are talking about, I don't know how seriously, they are talking about potentially dropping in the 82nd Airborne or sending in the Marines. Netanyahu says ground troops, by which he means American ground troops, will be necessary to accomplish this regime change. This is the perfect time for the absolutely outraged and fed up American people to get behind the Defend the Guard movement, to use our power of nullification and interposition by the states to force the state legislatures and the governors to interpose themselves between the people and the president. Demand that they follow the law. The U.S. Constitution that creates the Congress, the presidency, and the Supreme Court. The very charter that ordains this government forbids them from taking us to war without a declaration by the representatives of the people. And that's all that law says. Defend the Guard says you can have our Guard units for overseas combat missions as soon as you declare war, as soon as Congress takes their responsibility. And the whole movement is led by bringourtroopshome.us and the guys at defendtheguard.us, who are all Ron Paul guys, who are right-leaning Republicans. They're not, Ron Kovic hippies from Vietnam. They are right-leaning veterans of Bush and Obama's terror wars of our era, and are demanding a stop to this. Dan McKnight he's their leader. He has a great new piece in the American Conservative magazine today about standing with Joe Kent and calling on other fed up war veterans to go ahead and make their presence known now. So I know it's an uphill battle. It sounds like the kind of thing that'd be very difficult to pass, but you know what? We've got Defend the Guard passed in, I don't know the total numbers, but in quite a few state houses and state senates around the country, just not at the same time. We've got it through a lot more committees than that. And it very well could be that this is the year that we get this thing to a governor's desk. And you know what? If they veto it, fine. Make them veto it. And then if we can, see what we can do about really organizing the votes to override that veto and force the issue. And look, don't get me wrong. If especially a president like Donald Trump had to go right up against a governor over whether he could have those Guard troops or not, Donald Trump would win, okay? And the governor would give up. But let's make them fight about it. Let's make them answer why it is that this law even exists. Where does this come from? Where is this sentiment coming from? You know, as soon as Defend the Guard got the bill introduced in just a couple of state houses, PBS NewsHour came and did a 20-minute special about it because they knew this is potentially huge. This is the American people, veterans, using the Constitution, using the Virginia and Kentucky resolutions, the advice of Jefferson and Madison to turn the states against the national government to protect the next generation from being used and abused the way that they were. That is absolutely huge. It is the most important aspect of the anti-war movement in this country right now. I urge you all as individuals and as a party to support it, meaning especially when the time comes, when there's a big fight in one of these committees in a state house or a state senate around this country, that we all work together and man those phones and make them ring and let these people know it really does make a difference. And, you know, there was this, here's the short anecdote. In Arizona, there was one good talk radio host who said, wow, this sounds really interesting to me. Let's talk about it all afternoon. And they got hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of calls over the next few days, and they passed it. And that was why they passed it, because the phone was ringing. I'm not here like, you know, Johnny Appleseed preaching democracy is works great if you just believe in it hard enough. But the thing is that on the margin, you know, threats of real angry constituents can really make a difference, especially when you're talking about state representatives and state senators. You want to have a political career still? Then do what I say or else I mean it. And they hear that loud and clear. And you know, Diego Rivera, who runs with Dan McKnight, yeah, great guy. He got so sick and tired of trying to educate these people. He just got over it. I mean, you know, he fought in the war. He didn't have the patience for this stuff. And he would educate these people, and he would have a state senator, a state representative who'd be like, oh, I'm so convinced. You really educated me. I totally believe in you, and I'm with you. And they'd be co-sponsors, and then they turn around and vote against it. And he just learned that, nah, you know what? Forget that. I'm just going to extort them. I'm simply going to threaten them. Do what I say or I'll destroy your career. It's as simple as that. I got enough people and enough money behind me. We can do it. And we're organized enough. We know who your opponent is, and we'll help him. You know, following the Israeli lobby example, right, of full extortion. And so, and it works. We haven't got it done yet, but it can be done. And when it's the libertarians who get it done, that'll be another very important feather in our cap. So with that, I'll leave you. Thank you, guys. And yes, I will sign your books, and I will sell you books and sign them at the back of the room. Thank you, guys. Thank you. Now.
We actually got something for you real quick. This is a prize for you. If you can see it, is the Dr. Pepper Peace Prize presented to Scott Horton. Yes. Okay, that was exhilarating. Actually, it was great. Thank you so much, Scott. So we have a couple more speakers left, and I don't know how you're going to follow that, but we're going to try. We have an excellent speaker coming up, and you all know him now as your Lieutenant Governor candidate. So John Thomas, come on up.
So I was kind of like proud of myself. I was like, wow, I get to have Scott Horton as my opening act. Like, and then it dawned on me, oh my goodness, that is a tough act to follow. So it absolutely is. Thank you, Scott, for making our heads explode with information that like it is impossible to retain. I don't know how your brain works. Must be a lot of coffee or Dr. Pepper. But speaking of coffee, check out the Scott Horton coffee. Anybody have the coffee here tonight? Is it good? All right, great. Bucks County coffee. Gotta love that. Well, I gotta. I'm not really much of a coffee connoisseur. In fact, when it comes to coffee, I'm a lot like a boomer. Now, I am going to say some things tonight about the boomer mindset, and yes, there'll be stereotypical things. So we've got to understand that sometimes there are stereotypes that are not necessarily applicable to every single person in that age group and are applicable to people who are outside of that age group. But it does help us to think categorically. So I am not a boomer, but I have sort of a boomer mindset whenever it comes to coffee. I just drink whatever is there. But boomers do not drink coffee the way that other generations do. If you have ever said, them fancy coffee places like Starbucks have too many options. I don't want no caramel mocha, soy milk latte, French tickling, espresso jalapeno grande. I just want regular old coffee. You might be a boomer. And to be honest, that is about my feelings towards coffee. Boomers and those of us in Generation X who grew up in the rural areas, we didn't have a lot of options for coffee when we were younger. In fact, what we had was a red can and a blue can. That was it. I came from a blue can household. I had friends who came from a red can household, and I knew they came from a red can household because while I, like a normal person, stored my Matchbox cars in a blue coffee can, they stored theirs in a red coffee can. So those were the only two options growing up. We fortunately live in a world with far more options for coffee than just the red can and the blue can. You can have your specialty blend, and I can still have my Maxwell House. But politics still seems to be stuck in that old world 20th century boomer mentality. You have your choice of the red or the blue. And the boomer mindset is you have to have one or the other. If you don't drink Maxwell House, that means you must like Folgers. How many of us have been accused of being a Republican because we criticized the Democrats? In the same week, you were accused of being a Democrat because you were criticizing the Republicans. You guys, it happened to you? Yeah, it happens all the time. That is that red can, blue can boomer mentality. They're stuck in the 20th century. And we're a threat to that system because we want to move America to the 21st century. We're already 25% of the way through this century. It's about time for politics to catch up. Now, if I were to define the 21st century, it would be a century of choice. When I grew up way back in the 1900s, we had like country radio and you had popular radio. You had your choice between listening to one or the other. Today, you can listen to punk, metal, emo, rage music. And that's not like 4 different kinds of music. That's like you could listen to that very specific genre of music if you wanted to. I could listen to twangy country Bakersfield outlaw music if I wanted to. And somebody else could listen to specifically Baroque era classical music. There's just so many choices available, and they're all available on demand. We just have so many choices. You'll hear you'll hear boomers or Gen Xers like me who lived in the rural areas talking about growing up with just 3 television stations. And you had to watch whatever the television executives of those 3 networks told you had to watch. Today, nobody is forced to watch whatever television executives want them to watch. You're free to watch whatever. You could have been live at Horton 20 minutes ago. Like, you can watch whatever you want. I could go on and on about choices that we have. No longer is it just yellow cab or a bus. Now you can get an Uber, you can get a Lyft, you can ride the Liberty van. How many of you rode the Liberty van to convention today? All right. So yeah, no longer is it like I can either get pizza or I can go out to a restaurant. Now you can have dozens of non-pizza places delivered right to your door. And if you want to cook at home, you can get your groceries delivered right to your door. We have so many choices. Choice is the wave of the 21st century, except in politics. Politics is still stuck in the 20th century boomer world. Imagine if grocery shopping were like politics. You had 2 buckets of groceries you could choose from. In your red bucket, you have your Fruity Pebbles, your Skittles, your 1,000 Grand bar, and of course your Folgers coffee. In your blue bucket, you got your Berry Blast, Mike and Ike's. You got your Frosted Flakes. You have your Almond Joy, and of course, you have your Maxwell House. And you have a choice between the red bucket or the blue bucket. Those were your choices. Imagine if grocery shopping were like that. And it's even worse than that, because even if you chose like the blue bucket, if 51% of the population chose the blue bucket or whatever, the other bucket, you were stuck with the bucket that you didn't choose. That is how politics works. Some would say the solution to that is to offer a third bucket, where we take a little bit from that red bucket and a little bit from that blue bucket, and we mix them together, and we have this nice moderate bucket. But that's not really a great solution, because do I have any Maha friendly people out there? All right, a few of you. So what's the problem with these 2 buckets? They're all garbage. They're all poison. If you mix a little bit of this poison with a little bit of that poison, and think, oh, well, this should be okay. You're still dead. It doesn't matter. Like, so that is not the solution. That cannot be our solution, is to mix a little of this and a little of that. The red bucket and the blue bucket gives you two shades of the Epstein class. It's not red versus blue. It's the Epstein class versus you. That's and guess what? That's not new. That's the way it's always been. We're just starting to realize it now. We want to provide a solution to this, and we need to be careful that we don't just find something in the middle. We need to destroy the boomer bucket mentality completely. In the boomer bucket mentality, either your health care is provided by the red pedophiles or your health care is provided by the blue pedophiles. Either your child's education is provided by the red pedophiles or it's provided by the blue pedophiles. Either our social safety nets will be provided by the red pedophiles or the blue pedophiles. Think of how ridiculous this is. This would be like a plumber coming to my house to fix a leaky faucet. And he fixes the faucet. I say, great job. You did a great job with that. That faucet was driving me nuts. I'm so happy with your work. Care to take a look at the cyst on my back? Like, that makes no sense, but that's what we do. Just because we like somebody for his educational policy doesn't mean we should like him for his beauty salon licensure policies. But the way politics work is you get all of these different policies rolled into one. Our solution is to get the government out of the hands of the Epstein class entirely. It isn't politics that made the 21st century. It is the free market system that made the 21st century a century of choice. It's the free market working in spite of politics. Now, I do prefer one of our candidates up here earlier said that she preferred the term free market to the term capitalism, and I am totally with her for several reasons. For one, capitalism can be defined so many different ways. When you're talking to people who are not in this room and you talk about capitalism, a lot of times they have in mind what we would call crony capitalism, or what Gene Epstein, good Epstein, there are good Epsteins out there, what Gene Epstein would call crapitalism. I like that term, crapitalism. So then we need to like modify to specify what type of capitalism we're talking about. And we say, oh, well, I'm talking about free market capitalism. Well, just say free markets then. Like, don't muddy the water. Plus, the term capitalism was really popularized. Some of the Marxists will say that Marx invented the term, but no, he didn't. But he did popularize the term capitalism. And I don't really like the Marxists, so I prefer not to use one of their favorite terms. But most importantly, I prefer the term free market because it starts with the word free. And the 21st century, a century characterized by choice, must be a century characterized by freedom. Last month, the Liberty-Minded Book Club of Western Pennsylvania read My Bondage, My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. Now, if you are in the Pittsburgh area, you have to check out the Liberty-Minded Book Club of Western Pennsylvania. We read great books. We just met last Thursday and we're discussing a great book. We meet once a month just north of the city. It's a great time. Shameless plug over, but maybe I can mention the Liberty-Minded Book Club more than another speaker will mention Toastmasters, but probably not. Liberty-Minded Book Club of Western Pennsylvania. So the shameless plug over. last month we read My Bondage, My Freedom by Frederick Douglass. Now, in that particular autobiography, Frederick Douglass talks about the first time he heard the term abolitionist. The idea that there were people out there talking about freedom planted the seed in his mind that he did not need to be a slave for life. We have those seeds that we can plant in other people's minds. We can plant them with our words. We can plant them by that direct action that we talked about earlier tonight. We have those same seeds. But to be sure, it's not always the easiest thing to do. Because sometimes the choice between bondage and freedom can be uncomfortable. After all, quite often, ignorance is bliss. The ignorance of knowing only Folgers or Maxwell House left many people quite comfortable. While the introduction of new and different types of coffee was exciting and liberating to many, it left others bitter and angry. And again, this is not a knock on boomers. It's part of human nature. It's that whole red pill versus blue pill idea. Now, before I get into the red pill versus blue pill idea, I know people in this room know it, but I also know that we're streaming. And a lot of people think because we divide politics into the red versus the blue, that the red pill has something to do with Republicans and the blue pill has something to do with Democrats. Now, if you think that, you are almost certainly blue-pilled. You could vote Republican every single election. You could be the chair of the Republican National Committee, but if you believe the red pill has anything to do with Republicans, you are blue-pilled. Those of us in this room, we understand that this actually goes back to the movie The Matrix, right? Where one character was given the choice of taking a red pill and seeing the world in all its ugliness for what it really is, but not being able to forget what he saw, or taking a blue pill and living in that blissful state of ignorance. So we're in the business of getting people to take that red pill, but that goes back before the concept itself might go back to the Matrix, but the idea actually predates the Matrix by quite a bit. In fact, in My Bondage, My Freedom, Frederick Douglass says this: "As I read, behold, the very discontent so graphically predicted by Master Hugh." Now, Master Hugh was obviously Frederick Douglass's slave master at that point. He was one of his better slave masters. Like, if you can rank, it's like ranking the Epstein class. Like, I guess you can rank some slave masters better than others. So Master Hugh was one of the nicer slave masters. But Master Hugh's wife Master Hugh's wife was teaching Frederick Douglass how to read. And Master Hugh found out about it and was quite upset about it. He said, "You can't teach him to read. If you teach him to read, he will be unhappy. He'll have too much. He'll start to figure things out. And we want Freddie to be happy, right? So let's not teach him to read." And his wife agreed. Yeah, we do want Freddie to be happy. Let's stop teaching him to read. So here's what Frederick Douglass said: "As I read, behold, the very discontent so graphically predicted by Master Hugh had already come upon me. I was no longer the light-hearted, gleesome boy. Knowledge had come. Light had penetrated the moral dungeon where I dwelt. And behold, there lay the bloody whip for my back. And here was the iron chain. And my good, kind master, he was the author of my situation. The revelation haunted me. It stung me and made me gloomy and miserable. As I writhed under the sting and torment of this knowledge, I almost envied my fellow slaves of their stupid contentment. This knowledge opened my eyes to the horrible pit and revealed the teeth of the frightful dragon that was ready to pounce upon me. But it opened no way of escape. I was too thoughtful to be happy. Frederick Douglass was red-pilled, and it did not bring relief. It brought misery. We are in the business of getting people to take the red pill, and it's not an easy sell. What are we going to say? Hey, you want to take this pill that's going to make you absolutely miserable? It's not easy to do. When people see that the food that they've been feeding their minds of my team is the good guys and this other team is the bad guys, when they see that that food is just as poisonous as the food that they get off the grocery store shelves, it's not a feeling that's quite as liberating as you would expect. Your kind masters are not there to help you. They are there to increase their wealth and their power. And they mock you by using their wealth and their power to commit the most horrible atrocities you can imagine. This is not comforting. But revolutions are not built on comfort. During the 2012 presidential election, one of Ron Paul's favorite quotes was, and you guys could probably finish it for me, an idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government. Exactly. An idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government. That was 14 years ago. And we can ask ourselves, where is the revolution Ron Paul was talking about? Did its time not yet come? Did it come and pass? God forbid, was Ron Paul wrong? Could an idea whose time had come be stopped by an army or a government or a media? Let's see how history can help us answer that question. The Stamp Act was passed in 1765. The Treaty of Paris that ended the American Revolutionary War was not signed until 1783. That was 18 years between when an idea whose time had come and when people shook off the shackles of their oppressors. It was 1826 when Frederick Douglass was red-pilled to slavery. It was 1838 when he escaped slavery. So that was 12 years between an idea whose time had come and when he was free. And an additional 26 years before Maryland, the state of his enslavement, abolished slavery. We are in the time frame in which Dr. Paul was talking about. But revolutions require discomfort. The slaves in the blissful state of ignorance did not shake off their shackles and risk life and limb on a northward journey toward liberty. It was the slaves like Frederick Douglass who became uncomfortably aware of his situation who took the treacherous trail toward freedom. The founders did not declare their independence at the first sign of troubles with the crown. It was only after a long train of abuses when they committed to the cause of independence. Discomfort is a necessary precursor to revolution. Our message is one that shines light on the ugly truth of the Epstein class of both political parties. This will make people uncomfortable. This will make people angry. And this will make them feel like they are too thoughtful to be happy. But alas, I am not a pessimist. I am not black-pilled. I am an optimist. I am very much white-pilled. We will shake off the shackles of the oppressive state. We will achieve freedom. And an idea whose time has come cannot be stopped by any army or any government. But more importantly than that, even more importantly than the words of Ron Paul, is my faith. Just after Frederick Douglass complained about being too thoughtful to be happy, he tells us this: I finally found the change of heart which comes by casting all of one's cares upon God and by having faith in Jesus Christ as the Redeemer, friend, and Savior of those who diligently seek him. After this, I saw the world in a new light. I seemed to live in a new world, surrounded by new objects, and to be animated by new hopes and desires. I loved all mankind, slaveholders not excepted, though I abhorred slavery now more than ever. This revolution might not be one in our lifetimes, but I can rejoice because true freedom never did come from politics. It comes from faith in Christ Jesus. If you don't know him, I welcome you to find that hope. If you do know him, I implore you to abhor the oppression of the government, but to love your enemies. And yes, that includes your enemies in the Epstein class. Now, don't get me wrong. That doesn't mean that we let them escape justice. Christ Jesus himself said that it would be better for one of these people who cause a little one to sin to be tied to a millstone and tossed into the sea. Now, I believe in hell, and I believe that what that obviously means is there's different levels of punishment in hell. And because the guy who's tossed in the evil person who's tossed into the sea with a millstone, he's going to hell, just as the one who's not. But Jesus says it's better for the one who's tossed in. So it must mean that the afterlife is worse for the person who escapes justice. So the most loving thing we can do for those members of the Epstein class who have abused kids is to invest in some millstones. And I'm not saying that the government has to do it. I think we could crowdfund it. But I do want to close, though, with a message of love. We need to love our neighbors. We need to love our enemies. We need to love God. And for this group, we absolutely need to love liberty. Let people see that love. It is with love that we will win the Ron Paul revolution. Oh, yeah, and I don't want this junk food, so I'm just going to put it over here on the table, and you could basket raffle it. Wait, I'm supposed to introduce our most important speaker of the night, which is the next governor of Pennsylvania, Mr. Ken Krawchuk.
Hey, call me a boomer. Thank you. Next. But I believe in something from when I was a little kid. It's called ladies first. Who believes in ladies first? All right, at least there's me. So what I'd like to do is call up a lady before I start my spiel. And she is hiding back there. Jamie Remy, come on up.
Thank you so much. My mom always said I wasn't much of a lady, so I really appreciate that. Oh, nobody thought that was funny. Okay. My mom sure does. I'm very nervous because I'm not a politician. So, and I'm not a Toastmaster. I'm just your pissed off neighbor. The people of Bucks County asked me to come up and talk, and so did the people of Montgomery County. So I'm just going to kind of go over what I spoke on when I was there. Friends, in North Korea, they give people the illusion of a vote, but only one real choice, one name, one party, one approved answer. And we all laugh at that system because we know exactly what it is. It's dictatorship dressed up as a choice. But here in America, the illusion's more polished. Sorry, guys, I was not prepared to do this, so I apologize. We're told we're free because every year we get to choose between two parties, two candidates, and two versions of the same political machine. They fight over slogans, and they fight over branding, and they fight over whose turn it is to hold power. But when it comes to the things that actually matter, they agree. They agree on taking more of your money, on piling up more debt, and spying on the American people. They agree on endless interventions overseas, and above all, they agree that the political class should live by a different set of rules than the rest of us. I'm running because I reject that. I don't believe politicians are our rulers. I don't believe they're our moral superiors. And I don't believe that they get rights that ordinary people don't have. Because the principle is simple. You can't delegate a right that you do not possess. If I don't have the right to steal from my neighbor, I can't hand that right over to a politician and call it taxation. If I don't have the right to spy on peaceful people, I can't hand that right over to the government and call it security. If I don't have the right to violate life, liberty, or property of innocent people, then no politician gets to do that in my name and pretend it's justice. The law is for everyone, or it is for no one. The same law for the citizen, the same law for the billionaire, the same law for the bureaucrat, and yes, the same law for the politician. And that is why I'm running for the United States House of Representatives in Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District. I'm not running to join the ruling class. I'm running to challenge it. I'm running to remind this district that representatives are supposed to represent us, not rule us. I'm running to say that our rights don't come from Washington. Our freedom does not belong to the state, and the people that we send to office are supposed to be servants, not masters. I'm honored to have earned the endorsement of the Libertarian Party of Bucks County and Montgomery County. And now the next step in getting this campaign is before the voters is in your hands. I need your help right now. I need your help getting signatures. I need your help to get on the ballot. My name is Jamie Frost Remy, and I'm running for Pennsylvania's 1st Congressional District because I am your pissed off neighbor, and we need a change in Washington. Thank you. 10, please. Thank you.
Good luck.
Thank you.
Good luck. All right, my turn. Hey, wait a minute. TJ, where's my teleprompters? What do you mean I don't get one? You mean I have to say what I actually think and feel? What kind of political party is this? Oh, man. All right, I'm a Toastmaster. I can handle this. That's counting, that's one. First of all, I'd like to thank the Libertarian Party of Pennsylvania for granting me the honor of their nomination. And what I'd like to do is talk a little bit about what to expect on the issues for the governor candidate. Now, earlier today, you were here, I talked about the mechanics, how the campaign's going to be structured, what we're going to do. But that's only going to get us to the point where we can start doing things. So what I'd like to do is cover the 3 main items that a recent Rasmussen poll has said, Muhlenberg poll has said are on top of Pennsylvania's minds. I call it the 3 E's: education, the economy, and elections. And I'll let you cover each one of those. Sound good? Then we'll go Q&A. There you go. Wow, you guys are pretty agreeable. Let's start with the first E, education. I got to tell you, I'm not full of any good news. Matter of fact, it goes the other way. Like my adopted uncle George Carlin said, it's all one big club and you and I ain't in it. Do you know that in Pennsylvania, more than half the kids can't read and write at grade level? 2/3 can't do math at grade level. Yet our Constitution says all that the Article 3, Section 14, which is pi, that's how I remember that one, that General Assembly should provide for a thorough and efficient means of public education. Does that sound thorough when half the kids can't read and 2/3 can't do math? It gets worse than that. The average cost to educate a student in Pennsylvania is about $23,000, a little more than that. Do you know what the cost is for a private education? Not an elite school, none of these fancy places. Yep, you're good. You should run for governor, man. It's about little over $11,000 per kid. Half the price of a government education. So it's not thorough because the kids ain't learning. It's not efficient because it's twice the price. What do we do? I don't know. I do know. All sorts of things we could do. We can start off by electing a libertarian. That's what I'm there for. What I would like to see instead of what we have now is to take the money that the government is giving to a school district. Coincidentally, do you know how much they're giving to each school district per student? About $11,000. So rather than giving that money to the school district and letting the school district charge property tax on top of that, another $12,000, instead, I would like to see that $11,000 go directly to the student and placed into an education savings account. And then the parent can choose any private school for their child and get out of that failing government system. Can you imagine if you had $11,000 in your child's education savings account? It's going to set you free from a failed government system where half the kids can't read, 2/3 can't do math. This is what I have planned for Pennsylvania. And think of the good part of that. Since the government's already spending $11,000 per kid, there's no tax increase. Even better, because that pays for a private education for your child, we don't need the property tax. The largest chunk of property tax goes for education. That will be gone once we get these private education savings accounts set up. But how do we do that? Do you know how intertwined it all is? How many laws there are? How much would have to change? I'm going to tell you something that's a kind of a secret, because the secret's not going to come out until I stand on the steps of the Capitol to publicly announce my candidacy. I've put together a legal team of libertarian attorneys, 3 of them so far. I'm looking to add more to that. What we've done is we've put together a lawsuit to sue the General Assembly to privatize, completely divestiture of the public education system. Have a judge order the divestiture because they're not meeting their constitutional requirement. It's not thorough, it's not efficient. Take it away from them. Put the power back in the hands of the parents where it belongs. Who would like a private education for their child? To get rid of their property tax. Man. I'm calling myself the education candidate because this is a no-brainer. Why have these losing schools? You know, some of the schools, there's 3 of them in Pittsburgh that I could identify by name if I wrote them down, that have no kids at all that are proficient in math or in reading. Man, people ask me, why am I running? Because I'm mad as hell and I'm not going to take it anymore. And there's a solution in hand. We're going to sue the Commonwealth, divest the school system, and meet the requirements of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which I never leave home without. So that's the first E, education. It's a disaster, but we have a plan to fix it, the free market. So let's move on to the second E, the economy. Oh boy, that's an easy one to point out in Pennsylvania Do you know that the cost of government here in Pennsylvania has been rising at more than 3 times the rate of inflation for over 50 years? Doesn't matter if it's a Democrat in there, a Republican there. It doesn't matter if it's a high interest rate period, the Carter years, or the low inflation rate that we just had recently. The direction is always up, 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 up. Well, when I'm governor, that trend will end. I am promising that I will veto every single tax increase that crosses my desk, bar none. The growth of Pennsylvania government costs will end. Thank you. But that only holds the line. How do we start cutting back at this giant Leviathan cost? I go back to my job description, the Pennsylvania Constitution. When you look under the powers of the governor has something that Ronald Reagan always asked for but never got. It's called the line item veto. That means I could take anything in any law that's being passed and I could cross out what I don't like. Doesn't matter what it is. I went through and I found all kinds of things in there. For example, who likes horse racing? We got 1 or 2. Don't vote for me, because right now we're giving $200 million a year of tax money to horse racing, of all things. Giddy up, right? Well, with the line item veto, that's gone. Who likes sports? Stadiums. I should put on my glasses, make sure I got all these numbers right. $200 million of your tax dollars go to pay for their stadiums. How much are they paying Bryce Harper? If they can afford that, they can afford to pay their own stadiums. With the line item veto, gone. What else? Unions. The prevailing wage laws add $1 billion to the tax burden in Pennsylvania. Movies. $100 million of your tax dollars are going to pay for movies. Gone. Slush funds. The governor has $300 million of slush funds. Gone. One after the other. Anybody drink alcohol? Fine wine and good spirits. They get $100 million of your money every year. Gone. What else? Special interest. Convention centers. Yeah, keep going, man. There's more. Convention centers. $200 million a year for convention centers. Dirty air. They subsidize. I can say it. They subsidize $100 million to burn dirty coal. They're taking your money and polluting the air. What I just said there, that's over $3 billion. Governor Joshing Shapiro is asking for a couple $1 billion to raise the budget right now. He wants to raise taxes. No, he could get that money just by using the line item veto, a power he already has that he's not using because he's a Democrat. I mean, what do you expect? And when I'm using that line item veto, I'm just not looking at the big things. I'm looking at stupid little things. Coming in from Jersey into Pennsylvania, welcome to Pennsylvania. Joshing Shapiro, governor. Why is his name on that sign? Get it off. Stop doing that entirely. Why we don't want to do that? We've got all these state buildings. Why aren't they covered with solar panels? Companies will put them on there for free, and it costs you a lot less than what you get from Philadelphia Electric or Commonwealth or any of those other ones. It's so easy. Here's another stupid one. This is really, it bothers me. I'm a license plate spotter. I like to look at license plates. My daughter and I, we have a contest to see which new ones are coming out. Why are there 20 different kinds of license plates? You got the regular ones. You got truck. You got trailer. You got house car. You got this, that, the other. We don't need all of those. Why not just have a number? That's all you need. Just sequentially issued number, because it costs money to design 20 different kinds of license plates. Like I said, stupid little things. Those signs that measure your speed, they're like $10,000 a piece. Do you know it's cheaper to slow down traffic? Park a junk police cruiser on the side of the road. That'll slow people down. The locals will know that it's a junk car. Out of town people won't. Local people aren't going to be speeding on their local roads. Out of town people might. So it's going to stop the very people you're looking to stop. Man, oh man, what do we got? Daylight savings time. Any fan of changing the clocks? Yeah. Get rid of it. We as a state have the power to get rid of that. Personally, I want to go all daylight savings time. I'm willing to compromise and do the half hour, split it. Doesn't matter. Stupid little thing. Get rid of it. This one really killed me. Signs. Most road signs are useless. There's one that says slow. Well, you're always going slow, right? It could be another one, falling rock. Studies have shown they do zero good. They don't stop any incidents. They don't stop any traffic accidents. Nothing. They're pointless. But what they are is an obstacle that a car can hit, a wayward car, and that sign becomes a flying projectile, and who knows where it's going to land. Get rid of it. It costs $1,000 to put in there, and they got to maintain them and change them. Some of them are even worse than just useless. Those signs that say share the road, studies show they actually increase the number of accidents. Like I said, stupid little things, gone, 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 gone. None of those things are going to be there. Even some of the larger things. Why are we paying for the beauty contests for the two old parties, what they call the primary elections? Why are we paying for that? Do you know it's like 20% of Pennsylvanians don't belong to either party? More than half are not Democrats. More than half are not Republicans. But they're soaking us for the money. Gone, gone, gone. All these economic things that they're taking our tax money. Big things, little things, all kinds of things in between. I can't wait for that first budget. So many things are going to be gone. It is my goal to eliminate Pennsylvania's personal income tax over the course of my 4 years. Gone. More money in your pocket. Thank you. There's a lot of bad news here, like I said, but a lot of good news too. So for education, there's a way out of the failed school system for our children and a lot more money in your pocket without raising taxes. For the economy, gone, gone, gone. Yeah, they're going to try and override my veto, but you know how Pennsylvania is set up? It is so close, one side or the other. They'll never be able to override my veto, but you want to bet they're going to try and do the one for the primaries. They're just another special interest. Anyway, they could try, but it's going to reveal them for the special interest tax suckers that they are. Let's move on to the third E, elections. Man, there's so many things about elections that I had to cull it down to fit into the time frame that I have here. Mail-in ballots. They're ubiquitous these days, but mail-in ballots are the easiest way to cheat in an election. What's to stop some nefarious person from sending in 5, 10, 100, 1,000 ballots? And there's no audit trail on them. They send them in. Oh, who mailed that? I don't know. Next thing you know, you got foreigners voting. You got people voting 100 times. I will work to bring those, or get rid of all of those back and bring back Article 7, Section 14 of the Pennsylvania Constitution, which outlines only 5 reasons why you can do absentee voting. Things like you're sick, you're disabled, you're out of the Commonwealth on business, you're working the polls that day. There's only 5 things listed there. It doesn't say for the convenience of the people. So we just enforce the Constitution. My job description. And I'm going to make sure that that's going to be followed right off the top, starting with those mail-in ballots. And there are so many other places. Let's look at the last election, 2024. Statewide, 203 state reps, 25 state senators. Do you know how many of those had only one candidate? More than half. Out of the 125, there are 138 races with one candidate. What is this, communist Russia? If their goal is to prevent the competition from kicking them out of office, they're succeeding. Nobody wants to do this. Now, I know I'm preaching to the choir here. I've got to get 5,000 signatures to get on the ballot. Josh and Shapiro, he only needs 2,000. Jamie needs 5,100. Why? Because they said so. Because they don't want the competition. As my Uncle George said, it's one big club and you and I ain't in it. Obviously, we got to get rid of that. There's several things that we can do. Number one is my favorite. I'm a member of what's called the Pennsylvania Ballot Access Coalition. Libertarians, Greens, Constitution, Naderites, Communists. We don't agree on a whole bunch of things, but we all agree on one thing: fair ballot access. I call myself the mom of our ballot access coalition, because if somebody starts talking about anything else, gun control, this, that, or the other thing, knock it off. It's going to blow us apart. So we don't talk about that. We're pushing a law we call the Political Party Equality Act. It's got 3 pieces to it. Number one, if you have 1/20 of 1% of the voters registered in your party, you are a political party under the law. There's only one type of political party, 1/20 or more. That's about 4,000 voters, not very big. If you have that many, 4,000 voters, you are a party and you nominate according to your party rules, and that person goes directly onto the ballot. Yep. No signatures, no challenges, nothing. Because Article 1, Section 5 of the Pennsylvania Constitution says all elections shall be free and equal. So it's going to be equal. Nominate according to your party rules, step onto the ballot, and there's a fee. What is it, like $100 or something like that? What? You got 4 guys running, 5 guys running for governor. It brings in $500, maybe $1,000. Commonwealth doesn't need that money. It should be free and equal, what the Constitution says. Our Political Party Equality Act, that's the first part. Second part I already mentioned, they pay for their own primaries. We're not going to end primaries. They can do that. We don't care. But they're going to pay for their own follies, their own beauty contests. So that's the second part. The third one is for independents, the third part of that law. What that would do is, if you're an independent, a guy walking off the street, yeah, you have to get signatures. But it's just as many as what the 2 old parties need today. So if you're running for, like if Jamie is running for Congress, they need 500. You would need 500. If you're an independent, once you run for governor, if I said, the heck with you libertarians, I'm going to do it on my own, I would only need 2,000, not 5,000. And that's for the independents. And those signatures, they get turned into the Department of State, and the Department of State validates them. No more ballot challenges for anybody. No more lawsuits that can ruin you. In 2006, a green guy, Carl Romanelli, running for U.S. Senate, that year, the signature requirement was 67,000 signatures against 2,000 for the old parties. He tried. He turned in 98,500 signatures, a record for the Commonwealth. Well, the Democrats weren't going to have a green guy on the ballot. They dragged his butt into court, sued him, cut it down, those signatures. Oh, this person moved, invalid. Oh, he signed where he should have printed and printed where he should have signed. Invalid, 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 right on down the line. Ditto marks, no good, gone. They got him down to about 50,000, kicked him off the ballot, fined him $80,000 for the temerity of trying to get on the ballot. He's just a retired railroad guy from Reading, Pennsylvania. He still owes that money. Fortunately, I was a co-plaintiff on a law, this is in 2016, which found those fines unconstitutional, which is why I ran again in 2018, because it was the first chance that I had because of those fines. In 2010, we received a letter from the Republicans saying, get all your guys off the ballot, because that $80,000 fine, it's up to $106,000 now. We are going to bankrupt you. People say, Ken, are you going to run? It's like, no, I don't want to lose my house. My wife will divorce me. We found the courts found those fines finally unconstitutional. So I decided I was going to run again. So now everybody's able to run again. Between my race in 2002, when I ran for governor, until I ran again in 2018, there were no third party or independent candidates on the ballot for governor in Pennsylvania. If they're out to intimidate us, They succeeded. It wasn't until 2016 we finally won. They challenged us. We got it down to 500 signature cushion. It was close. They almost fined us $100,000. As I said, it's tough to collapse all the problems that we have here with education. I get my E's confused. With elections. Other things. Gerrymandering. They love to gerrymander. There's an easy way to do this. There's a mathematical way called split line districts. You take all of Pennsylvania, you cut it in half. Two sides, equal population. Oh, you want more districts? Cut them in half again. 4 equal things. Oh, how many we need? For Congress, we need what, 17? Cut it into 17 equal districts. Yeah, you got to maybe bump around a city. You don't want to split cities in half. And that's it. It's mathematical. You stick it in a computer, you push a button, there are your districts. No gerrymanders, no judges, no Supreme Court stepping in and illegally, unconstitutionally saying these are going to be your districts. Split line districts, they're called. Get rid of that. I'll do one more, and then we'll move on. We have something here called plurality elections. Person with the most votes wins. Well, what happens is you got the green, the green, red and blue on there. You don't like either one. How often do you vote for the lesser of two evils? Right? You hold your nose and you vote. They don't see you holding your nose. They look at it as a mandate, saying, oh, he likes me. He voted for me. And they take that as a mandate for everything that they're doing. Plurality is recognized as the worst voting system on the planet. Nothing else is really compares to be worse. What we need to do is change that. People say, oh, what about instant runoff voting? Or, that doesn't change anything. If there's only 2 people there, what are you going to do? And if you've got a third person on there, marginally better, just a little bit. What we need to do is completely revamp how we vote. Start from scratch. First principles, as Elon Musk would say. What we need to do is add a button, not saying who you like, but who you dislike. Wouldn't that be fun? Pushing that dislike button? The way it would work is you get to approve of 0, 1, or 2 candidates for a given race. 0, 1, or 2 candidates. And for that same race, disapprove of 0 or 1 candidate. For each approval, they get a +1. For each disapproval, they get a -1. And the person with the highest net score wins. Pretty simple. The example that I like to talk about is Donald versus Hillary. Most people didn't like either one. They had a base 10, 15%, something like that. They would have gotten 10, 15% of these pluses, but they would have gotten 50, 60, 70 minuses. Neither one would have won. Think about that. Who would have won? Would it have been Jill Stein, Gary Johnson, some dog catcher independent who got his name on the ballot because we made it easier for him to get on the ballot? Extremist people aren't going to be picked because too many people are going to be hitting that disapprove button. So much that button's going to be busted before the end of the day. These are the things that I'm working for under education. And there's more. I can go on and on. I told the story earlier today about Joshing Shapiro, how he promised to pass our Voters' Choice Act, which made it easier for us third parties to get on the ballot. He said, I got it in writing from him saying, I support free and equal elections and I support the Voters' Choice Act. Well, came the day to vote, and you know what he did. I told you earlier today. He voted against it. It's like, Josh, how could you do this? And he whines, well, I got to go out in January and you got all summer. It's like, Josh, you guys wrote that law. If you don't like it, change it. Don't put it on me. Man, oh man. E's. The 3 E's. Education. I'm going to work to get your kids a private education with $11,000 in your kid's pocket. Actually, it's $11,500 because you get transportation as well. Also going to work to eliminate that property tax. What am I missing? No, this is not my notebook. For you, $5. So there you go. The 3 E's. Private education for your kid, $1,000 in your kid's education savings account, and property tax for our schools gone. For the economy, getting rid of the pork barrel spending, eliminating the Pennsylvania personal income tax. Elections, getting fair and equal elections that we can trust. This is what I'm promising for the people of Pennsylvania. This is what I'm working toward. This is what's on the back of all my little cards and what's on the banner in the back of the room. These are the things I want to do. It's a no-brainer. And to make sure that it happens for the education side, I'm going to be filing a lawsuit to have it overturned. And one piece of that lawsuit is calling for the judge to set a hard date to complete the privatization, the divestiture. And if they don't meet that date, they don't get paid. Do you want to see how fast they can act? Well, we're going to see. Well, I can go on and on and on, as you can tell. You know, I'm also a professional public speaker. People actually pay me to speak, but I know a lot of people who just pay me to shut up. I hope that this isn't one of those things. Let me pause right there, open the floor up to questions. I'll answer a question on any subject. Any questions? Please. What's that? Oh, yeah, that's fine. You can do that. Oh, must be getting old. Nobody's even going to ask about abortion. James had it. Well, it's the same thing. Any kind of a tax like that, stuff that's already on the book, it's hard to change because it takes an act of the legislature to remove it. It's only the enforcement, it's the funding of the enforcement that I can affect. And of course, they're going to freak out for stuff like that. They're going to try and override the veto. And I bet they're going to be successful a couple of times. But yeah, inheritance tax should go. All the taxes should go. And you know, when I said get rid of the property tax, there's this much property tax. Schools are this much, but there's still a piece over here that's left over. It pays for things like the county court system, the roads, the county roads, traffic lights, things like that. What I want to do is something I call free the property tax. I want to have a free market in those remaining pieces there. Like, for example, my hometown of Abington, they've nationalized our trash collection. What if we opened it up? If we freed the property tax, you could choose any trash hauler you want at a lower rate. You don't have to choose the government one. Choose the private one. It could be the same thing with fire protection. It could be the same thing with police. It could be the same thing with paving the roads, plowing the snow. Free the property tax, safety inspectors. All these things are better done cheaper by the private sector. So not only can I get rid of 60, 70, 80, 90% of the property tax through this lawsuit, by freeing the property tax, we can get rid of the rest. Yes, Autumn. About the horrible what? School lunches. Well, do you know, once this lawsuit succeeds, there will be no school districts. There will be no government schools at all. They won't have any money. They won't have any power. They won't have any school buildings. We're going to sell them all off to the highest bidder. As long as they're educating our children properly, according to private estimates, it's not going to be the government determining whether or not they're good. I worked for 20 years at Educational Testing Service. I've worked on NAEP, the Nation's Report Card. I was in charge of their testing centers worldwide for a while there. I know what it takes. We'll go to them, private company. Tell us. Same people who do your SATs. We trust them to a degree. I worked inside. I trust them. I've seen what they do. They try very hard to be fair. We'll go to them to determine whether or not it's any good. So your school lunches, they're gone. You're going to a private school. You picked the private school. You could pick them for the best lunches they got. It's going to be steak and lobster, not just for the troops, but for your kids too. What if you're a homeschooler? Can you imagine you're a homeschooler? Hey, I ain't done, girl. You asked. Like I said, people will pay me to shut up. If you're a homeschooler, you got $11,000 sitting there. Take your kid on a field trip. Say, hey, what's it like riding overnight on a train? Hey, what's it like being in Disneyland? I don't know. Homeschoolers, they're very, very creative about this. So I'm sorry, Autumn, nobody's going to be buying those crappy lunches. Nobody's going to have the money to do it. School districts will be gone. Government schooling will be gone. Private sector will take over. What do we do? I still have a couple more minutes. Privatize it, man. We certainly need the legislation. The big thing is, though, it brings in a couple $1 billion of revenue to the Commonwealth every year. Well, the thing is, if you privatize it, people are going to still be buying alcohol. There are going to be hundreds, thousands of new liquor stores all over the place. All those taxes are going to be there, including that crazy Johnstown tax from 100 years ago, which they said was temporary, right? Temporary tax, oxymoronic. Without changing any of those things, it's still going to bring in about the same amount of money. We'll have better choice, better options. Some places not closed on the 4th of July. So we'll get rid of that. I've had state store people, I still call them state stores. I'm a boomer. State store employees are like, yeah, what's going to happen to my job? Well, the same is going to happen to the teacher. They're going to go to the new store. They're going to go to the private sector. Good teachers, good state store clerks, they're going to get a good job. The crappy teachers, the crappy clerks, they're going to be down McDonald's now, working there. Eliminating roadside revenue collection, like cops and speed limits and things like that. Yeah. Well, interestingly enough, that's authorized by the Constitution. The gas tax is limited in what it can pay for, and it just doesn't pay for what it should. Constitution says for the maintenance and construction of bridges and roads and safety on the highways. They use safety on the highways to pay for the state police. So most of the state police money comes from the gas tax. So what they do is they think that that is safety. One thing I like to say is more important than solving a problem correctly is to solve the correct problem. What's the problem with people going too fast on the roads? It's just not safe. Who is more interested in safety? The government or the insurance companies? One thing, my Tesla, I love my Teslas, man. Tesla's doing insurance now. What they do is they watch what your car is doing and they base your rate on how you drive. If you're a safe driver, it is far, far below regular rates. If you're driving like Mad Max all the time, your rates are going to be higher. You choose how much you're going to want to do. And it's going to reach a point where you're just such a crappy driver, nobody's going to insure you. And if you're out on the roads that you don't own, that we, the people collectively own, well, then we could shut you down. We could put you in jail. Put your ass in jail because you're being unsafe. Doing 90 through a residential area? No. We don't need state police to do that. We need the free market to take care of that. Free market's always the answer. And Roy Minette's just sitting there grinning. That's what it's all about. He's got some great books back there, by the way. The one I like is the Savior of the Universe or something like that. Savior of the World. It's all about the free market. It's real small. You can read it in 2 minutes. You had your hand up. Yeah. How about that? Constitution says you have the right to testify witnesses against you. There are no witnesses against you. It's just some box up on the wall. Man, just on the constitutional grounds alone. I went through this. I don't have the list in front of me. There's 17 places where they violate the Constitution. That's one there. Another one there is the state legislature shall receive salary, mileage, quote, no other compensation whatsoever. Yeah, but they got themselves fancy offices and walking around money and retirements and everything like that. 17 places I've identified. My least favorite is Article 1, Section 21. Anybody know what it is? The right of the citizen to bear arms in defense of himself and the state shall not be questioned. I have no question what that means. I got to tell you a story. In 2002, I was in a debate, broadcast nationally. Ed Rendell, right over there. We were allowed to ask each other 2 questions. My first question was for Ed. I said, Ed, the Constitution says the right to bear arms shall not be questioned, but you're calling for limiting gun purchases at 2 a month. I want to know, what are you going to betray? Your oath to the Constitution or your promise to the anti-gun lobby? Ed smiled, looked at the camera and said, I think we can have reasonable gun control. And the second question I ask of me, but that's a separate story. So anyway, shall not be questioned. Yes, sir. NUMAC? NUMAK or something? No, I've never heard of NUMAC. Oh. Yeah. I was born that year. It wasn't me. Well, why do you say it's taxpayer money? Because I have a plan for pollution, which, in fact, the Republican in 2002 endorsed my plan to take care of pollution, Superfund sites, and all that kind of stuff like that. It's called polluter pays. Right now, if you bought a house, and let's say you had all that uranium in the backyard, do you know who's left holding the cleanup bag? You are, because you bought it, even though the seller knew it was there. That's fraud. We could use, you're trespassing. They're allowing their junk to leak onto your property. So you can use all of the remedies that you have for trespassers against polluters. So you can have court injunctions saying, clean up the mess. Stop doing what you're doing. Pay for that cleanup. So whoever made that mess, they're the ones who clean up. Different point of view. Yeah, good luck. You know, and there's a broader problem than that. We've got the wrong kind of nuclear reactors. We should be using thorium reactors or sodium reactors, the ones that are safer. There you go. Somebody who knows his nuclear science. Yes, sir. Same thing. Well, are you talking about fracking? Same thing. It's any kind of pollution. It's all treated the same way. In fact, I have something a little broader than that. It's something that I call a CANT license, C-A-N''T, a CANT license. I started it off with driver's licenses. We shouldn't have driver's licenses. Go out and drive. But if you're an idiot with your car, you get a can't drive license. And if we catch you driving, we throw your butt in the clinker. And you can use that for anything. You don't need a gun license. You need a can't carry license. If you're an idiot with a gun and we catch you being an idiot with a gun, we give you a can't carry license. Maybe it's only for 6 months or a year or something like that. If we catch you with a gun, we throw your butt in the clinker. If somebody's polluting, we give them a can't frack license, a can't pipeline license, can't mine license, whatever it is. There's a whole slew of can't licenses that we can use. And that means that we, the honest people, we don't get punished. Only the criminals get punished. What a concept. Yes, sir. How can I get new reactors built in Pennsylvania? I'm not. I'm not going to do it at all. When I ran in '98 against Tom Ridge, what he did is he said, we've got to save this shipbuilding site in Philadelphia Navy Yard. I brought in this company, Kvaerner, and they're taking it over. Well, 2 years later, Kvaerner went bankrupt. What was the one that Obama did? Solyndra? Same thing. The government is not smart enough to run in the free market. Nothing they do in the free market is any good. So I would not have the government build nuclear reactors, shipyards, or anything. Veto power. Veto everything that goes by. And if there's funding for it, that's where I really have the power over the budget. And I'm starting to run overtime. And nobody's asking about abortion. Oh, damn it, we got one back there. Yeah, Nate. What is geoengineering? What, you mean like the Army Corps of Engineers rerouting rivers and stuff? What do you mean? Well, you're polluting. Same thing. We already covered that. Yes, sir. I cannot hear you. Yep, absolutely. I think John Thomas already touched upon this. He chairs the Board of Pardons. I'm promising my first day in office, day one, I'm going to sit down at that desk. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to pardon every single nonviolent drug offender. And thank you. If there's some piece of paper they didn't file, oh, you don't have a carry permit. So what? You got a pardon. No victim, no crime. All of these things. You've defrauded somebody, you stay in jail. You gave drugs to kids, you stay in jail. But if you're only just sitting back, smoking a joint, watching The Simpsons, and they knock down your door, you've got to get out of jail free card from this governor. So once that happens, the cops are going to say, why are we bothering to arrest this person? He's only going to get pardoned. This actually happened in Philadelphia when Ed Rendell was mayor. He ordered the police department not to bust for small amounts of pot. I was standing in an alley with a couple people, and they're passing around a joint, and a cop walks by and says, shouldn't you be keeping a lookout? And he kept right on walking. So we're cool. We'll just pardon everybody. I'll slow down here. And nobody asked about abortion. All right, you know what I'm going to do? I think I'm going to stop there. But before I do, I want to address the elephant in the room. People look at me and say, Ken, great ideas. Yes, I would love to have $11,000 in a private education for my kid. Absolutely. We should stop the growth of the cost of government. Yes, we need good elections, but Ken, face it, you're not going to win. Oh, hold it. I can win. It's in the cards. And we don't have to have Josh and Shapiro be put in jail for the Ellen Greenberg case. And we don't have to have Stacey Garrity tied too close to Trump that she loses. We don't need that. Because if you crunch the numbers, you find out that the two parties, old parties, have disillusioned so many people, not many people are going to vote this year. If it struggles, 40%, 35, 45%. If you crunch the numbers, you find that all it would take to secure a libertarian victory is to attract the vote of 1 out of 6 voting age Pennsylvanians. That's it. 1 out of 6 can stop their tricks. So if you're sitting at a table with 5 people and they're all saying, that guy Ken's crazy, and you're like, no, I'm going to vote for it. That's all it takes. One after the other. So we can do it. And at the very least, we're going to send a very, very strong message. And one thing I could do this year, Josh Shapiro has a double-digit lead over Stacey. Joshing is going to win. What the pollsters are saying, Stacey's going to lose. So it's safe for a Democrat to vote Libertarian because their candidate's going to win. He doesn't need you. But they do want to get rid of their property tax. They do want a private education for their children. Same with Stacey. She's not going to win. It's safe to vote for a Libertarian. So that's what I'm planning on doing. I'm going to try and convince people it's safe to vote for a Libertarian this year because of how badly the country is divided. Take advantage of the situation. So I'm going to end saying, please vote for me, Ken Krawchuk, Libertarian for Pennsylvania governor. Because if people keep voting the way they've been voting, they're going to keep on getting just what they've been getting. And I don't know about you, but I have had enough. Thank you for your attention. Yeah. Get me out there. Get me into the schools. Get me into the agencies. Mr. Gregg.
Thank you very much.
Oh, thank you. And join Toastmasters.
All right. Thank you, Ken. Appreciate that. What a night of speakers tonight. Thank you all very much. We're going to wrap up tonight with Reese going ahead and drawing the baskets. So if you're here, come get it. If not, let's get somebody to write that who wins down so we can contact them so they can get that. Perfect. Okay. So I believe everybody's name should be written on the back of these ones this year. Oh, Pete. No, I don't. I was told to write my name on the back, so I don't. Yeah, that's fine.
All right, everybody, it's raffle time. So pull out your raffle tickets and let's see who wins. The first raffle item we have is the signed Sidney Crosby big photo.
Sidney Crosby photo. Greg Deal.
Hey, Jeff Kelly.
Jeff Kellick, congratulations. That's all right. I wanted the steel curtain one anyway.
Up next, we have the big one, Barkley signed photograph. I'll say significantly less tickets than either the Sidney Crosby or the steel curtain one. So I think the Southeast is kind of sleeping on raffle tickets here. Ryan Jackson.
Brian Jackson, congratulations.
Okay.
Hey, Reese, this better be me on this one.
I really hope this is Greg.
This is day 0 of 700 and some. 730. Yeah. Maybe that's 28. I'll be gone by time. Yeah, 738.
Okay, no name on it, so I'm going to read the number. It's 432
432
358
358 8. John Thomas. I see you, Breeze. Yeah, seriously, the one that fell out. I saw it. I'm teasing. Right. He drops it out. It's me. That's my luck.
is the one basket with various wines of all three counties. 2 wine glasses and 1 pound of assorted chocolate from Billy Candy. What a great night.
Courtney Turner. They went back to the hotel earlier. She'll be here in the morning. Rifle.
Meeting items, full light, some Coronas, some other alcohol, some sweets, and other stuff.
Hold ticket. All right, Nick. That's, by the way, that's 2 years in a row for the gun.
All right. Next, we have some Krawchuk basket. This is the mustard basket. There are a lot of tickets in
All right, hold on. Let's let her draw it. Get high in 4 to
This
6
is a
weeks.
repeat of last year. I
Yeah.
won trivia and I won the Bucks basket.
Autumn Autumn Pangea, congratulations.
Everyone's favorites up next, the soap bed.
This is the Possum Mitch special. The Cozens, congratulations. You can wash your clothes for 2 whole years now. Right. All right, David. Congratulations. Oh, I should probably sign it. Jamie Smith, congratulations. Hey, Reese, that serves you right. Garden basket. This is always a fun basket. Who's that from? Westmoreland County. Thank you. And Butler did one a couple years ago. Joshua Zisman. He had to go home. I will contact him. You might want to write that down. I will contact him. Brittany, remind me in the morning to let him know because I will forget. But congratulations, Joshua. All right, Courtney Turner wins 2. Congratulations. That's cool. I don't think that's a thing. Okay, congratulations. Okay. All right, everybody, that wraps it up for tonight. Feel free to mingle until they kick you out. I don't know how that works, but board members, we'll see you at 9 a.m. tomorrow. If you're going to stick around for the trainings, we have a training at 10 and 11 o'clock tomorrow morning. What now? I can't hear a single. Lola, 7:45. 7:45 is the Ladies of Liberty event here, and breakfast and the vigil in the morning. 6:30 at Washington's